across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Yes, welcome. It is the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. Back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So, as you will be more than aware, Sir Keir Starmer's Director of Communications has now resigned, putting Keir Starmer in an even worse position. Tim Allen quit just a day after Morgan McSweeney quit as Chief of Staff. How much longer can Keir Starmer hang on for? We'll open the lines on that one now. Also this afternoon, it's been revealed the number of migrants crossing the Channel on small boats under Starmer is soon to exceed that of any previous Prime Minister ever. Over 65,000 have reached Britain across the Channel since Labour won election just 19 months ago. That averages around about 790 people every week just pitch up on a boat at Dover. You can't make it up. And it's been found that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor leaked trade envoy reports to Jeffrey Epstein. What is wrong with these people? He passed on an email containing at least 4 assessments in 2010 when acting as the UK's global trade chief. We'll look more in that as well. Lots to come, details to come, everything you need to know, and all the breaking news, of course, right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. So, as it turns out, it wasn't Keir's fault at all. There was me thinking that just because he's the actual Prime Minister and has the most senior job in the entire government and he's literally responsible for appointing people like, for example, the UK ambassador to the United States, I was thinking, and what an ill-informed person I clearly am, that it might actually have been Keir Starmer's fault that he appointed a known and ongoing affiliate with a paedophile to the top job in Washington. But I was wrong. Turns out it was a fella called Morgan McSweeney. And I'll say it again, that is not a Dickens character. No, Morgan McSweeney is actually a real person, a shady figure that lurked in the wings, pulling the strings and making decisions, knowing where the enemies are, knowing where the bodies are buried, and how to get a yes answer from people who mean no. Yes, sounds a bit like Peter Mandelson, which is interesting because Morgan McSweeney was literally Peter Mandelson's bag carrier and protege. McSweeney learnt those dark arts from Mandelson himself. But he's gone. In a statement yesterday, he resigned from his position as Keir's Chief of Staff. By the way, there's no video release of this statement because, curiously, and this is true, no one has ever really heard the Irish Svengali speak. Morgan McSweeney is almost mute. Try and find a clip of him online and you'll be left wanting. So it fell to us to do the best we could do. We got an uncannily sounding actor to voice his statement.
After careful reflection, I have decided to resign from the government. The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country and trust in politics itself. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment and I take full responsibility for that advice.
Right, so that was really him. So it was his fault, not Keir's fault, which is kind of odd. The PM was happy and is happy for him to take the blame, which is slightly at odds with what Starmer said in 2020 when he was running for leadership of the Labour Party.
Hear me out. I had 8,000 staff for 5 years as the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I acted, I hope, in the right way with them, which is when they had victories, I celebrated on their behalf. I picked up awards on their behalves. And when they made mistakes, I carried the can. I never turn on my staff, and you should never turn on your staff.
Hear, hear. Never turn on your staff, apart from when you turn on your staff. And then, like a healthy dose of Shakespeare, 24 hours after McSweeney walks the plank, another one goes. Yes, Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, not the bloke from Toy Story, has now gone. Another fairly anonymous character. He hasn't spoken very much either, so we got another uncannily sounding voice to read his statement.
I have decided to stand down to allow a new number 10 team to be built. I wish the PM and his team every success.
There you go. Yeah, he stood down. McSweeney stood down. Remember what Keir Starmer said, though?
And when they made mistakes, I carried the can.
Yeah, you carry the can, apart from when it's those two blokes. Interesting times. How long, serious question, can Starmer hang on for? How long can he hang on for? 0344 499 1000. This is a great. Imagine working in Downing Street right now. The atmosphere and the sense of spirits must be at the lower than a dropped curb over there at number 10. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Oscar Reddrop is with us, former number 10 advisor. Afternoon to you, Oscar. You know what it's like in government when the chips are a little bit down, people are feeling deflated. What would your assessment be of what number 10 is looking like right at this moment?
I think the terrifying reality, when I think back to the last days of Boris, which I imagine we're at a similar stage right now in number 10, for the general public out there, is nothing whatsoever to do with the governing of the day-to-day, of making our lives better, of pushing through policy and solving the acute problems we have in society. That is so far away. It is people running into rooms. It is cliques, if you like, getting smaller and smaller, the circles of trust getting more paranoid and smaller. Number 10 is not built for purpose, in my view, as a building itself. I mean, I kind of say it flippantly, but also seriously. The building needs knocking down. It should be made into a museum. It's not a modern working place whatsoever. So there'll be all these weird little corridors now where paranoid advisors are, checking their phones every 2 seconds, wondering what the hell's going to happen next. Keir Starmer, I imagine, is probably in a study somewhere. Now Tim Allen, his director of comms, is gone. Morgan McSweeney's gone. I'm not quite sure who he'd be in that room with right now, who his ultra trusted circle is right now.
Because these were big players. Well, I mean, if you're the chief of staff at Downing Street, you're a big player. If you're director of communications, and for those uninitiated, that is the go-to man, of course, is Alistair Campbell, to highlight who the kind of person that does that job, how crucial it is to the workings of the Prime Minister. If you lose those two cogs of your wheel, then you're in trouble, aren't you, as a Prime Minister?
Oh, completely. I mean, this is the thing here, and people say, when's he going to go? How long can he hold on for? For me, and people do sit on the fence on it a bit because they don't want to make a prediction and say, oh, he's going to be gone tomorrow, and then we're sat here in May and he's still here. But as it stands right now, I mean, we're days away. Like maximum, is my view. Wow. And of course, anything can happen, anything can change. And that kind of black swan event, if you like, he might just be holding out for. I just need to literally almost sit under my desk. Yeah. Kind of sit under my desk, and just something might change. Some extraordinary event, within the party, in the world, in the country, anything whatsoever, kind of a dead cat strategy, if you like. But in terms of his authority, in terms of his political capital, it is at zero at this point, complete and utter zero. Yeah. And so you can talk about how he got here. What could he do right now? I mean, the only thing he could do, potentially, and even this might not necessarily work, is to completely put together, within a day or a couple of days, some kind of all-star team, that the entire Labour Party could kind of get behind. But those people don't exist now. Who is in their right mind, for example, is going to want to be the director of communications for Keir Starmer right now, when they could be in the job for a matter of hours?
That may not be an exaggeration.
No, quite. So in that sense, it's all done. I think the sad thing for Starmer not for your viewers necessarily, who've probably at many occasions have felt entirely let down by our Prime Minister over the last 18 months. But for him personally, and this is the tragedy of him, I don't think he understands how he got here. I think he will genuinely be looking in the mirror saying, I'm a decent bloke. I've tried to make the right decisions at the right time. And, you know, I'm a good guy. You know, I like the football. I'm a family man and blah, blah, blah. And I won this huge election with a big mandate. You know, how has it got like this?
Yeah.
And it takes a real brave person around him. And this is what I would say that there's mutual respect for, to put their arm around his shoulder and tell him how he got here and how there's no getting out of it.
No getting out of it at all. And he released a statement about, you know, he's going to carry on changing the country or something of that nature. It was just, again, a very sort of archetypal Keir Starmer-esque clinical press release, which rather goes to the bullseye of the problem, I sense, Oscar.
It is. And if I compared stuff with Boris and what happened with Boris, I mean, and we look, don't get me wrong, we all know how that ended. But Boris, I think, lasted and survived longer than maybe otherwise than Starmer will, because Boris could slam his hand on the desk and say, I have an agenda. You know, I got us through COVID, you know, for good, for bad, for worse. You know, the vaccine rollout, you know, I'm leading from the front on Ukraine. There is, you know, I got Brexit done. You know, I'm about to embark on this levelling up agenda. Don't let this end now. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, that still didn't work. What can Keir Starmer bang his desk?
Well, that's exactly it.
And tell his MPs, don't cut this short now. I need to, I have this agenda that we're halfway through. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
there is nothing he can hang his hat on. And at that point, what are his MPs saving him from?
And when they release a statement that, essentially says, his spokesperson says the Prime Minister is not considering his position, he's getting on with the job of delivering change across the country. And you're right, people will go, well, what does that look like? I tell you what it might look like. It's not the change he was looking for, and that's a record amount of people crossing the Channel, which we hear now, more than under any other leader so far. So we're looking at nearly 66,000 crossing the Channel since Labour came to power. That's nearly 800 every single week. These are the kind of records that are hanging around Keir Starmer's neck, Oscar.
Yeah, absolutely. It's these key delivery points that there has been no change on. We've gone backwards, if anything. And Keir Starmer, I'm afraid to say, has actually been blessed with relatively calm seas. You know, you look back at even Theresa May, the cards Theresa May was dealt around, that really difficult Brexit negotiations. And then obviously Boris had to deal with a global pandemic and wars on our continent springing up. You know, Keir Starmer has had a relatively, don't get me wrong, the world is always challenging and complicated. There are always external factors. He's had calm seas relatively to deliver this change. Obviously, the illegal crossings being one of the central delivery points. Yeah. And things have got worse. They've got worse. And again, this is a really good point, linking back to the, obviously the news of the day of Starmer's future. If he could bang his hands on the desk and say, guys, look at all this progress we've made on immigration to this country. Why would we stop that now? The voters understand it. They believe it. They're on board with it. They can see it's getting better. But he can't, and you could pick a whole ream of areas, not just illegal immigration. And again, there has been no change. We have gone backwards.
Indeed. On that point, Oscar, stay with us. Keir Starmer has lost 2 key advisors in the last 24 hours, despite the fact that Keir Starmer himself had said in 2020 this.
And when they made mistakes, I carried the can.
When they make mistakes, I carry the can. But he didn't carry the can. In fact, they got one of his head honchos, Morgan McSweeney, to write a statement going, no, it's all my fault. No, it's not. It's Keir Starmer's fault, the whole Epstein-Mandelson thing. How much longer can Starmer hang on for? 0344 499 1000.
So there's some people in society who believe that, you know, the flag is the symbol of the country, we should be proud of it, we should wave it, and, you know, I'm one of those. People who are apologists for the British Empire, for apologists for how we've been in the past, and it's almost a symbol of national shame to them. It's kind of like, well, we flew that flag. Oh, I'm not sure about this one.
The whole national shame thing, I believe that actually that's a sort of a greater agenda going on, to be honest with you. It's apologist nature of sort of of so many successive governments now who have sort of almost been forced to be embarrassed by our great British history.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. Loads to get through here. We've got Oscar Reddrop with us, and we're going to move to this story. Now, cast your mind back. I'm talking 2016. Do you remember this?
So what I'm saying to the government is, for the first time, the British public should have a say on the outcome of those negotiations, including the option of staying in the EU.
Yeah, well, it wasn't quite that in 2016. That's what he's saying now. Sadiq Khan, yeah, he's absolutely, clearly enamoured by the EU. The London Mayor has stated that his ultimate goal is to reverse Brexit. Of course he is. Oscar Reddrop, what are we making of this? You might just sort of put this under the category of no surprise.
No surprise, but I utterly relieved, and I hope I'm not tempting fate here, that Sadiq Khan's, you know, when we hear about the movement around Andy Burnham, and that Sadiq Khan's name is nowhere near even, you know, flirting with the idea of, you know, getting a seat perhaps in Parliament.
He'd love the job, though, wouldn't he?
He
Oscar?
would love it. He would love
Prime Minister.
He would love nothing more, and I think it's a real relief that his just atrocious, toxically atrocious record in London probably counts him out just on the basis of that. And in terms of Brexit, of course, it's no surprise. What I would say, and Keir Starmer, I think, it kind of tipped some water, if you like, into the glass of a slowly, perhaps rejoining the EU via the back door in a few ways. I think whoever takes over from Starmer potentially, and I think that probably would be a soft left candidate, would probably be quite aligned with Sadiq Khan's thinking in many ways. Yeah. So that's another thing that could be on the agenda for this country.
But do you think, Oscar, would that not be, if you were of that part of the political spectrum, wouldn't it be almost a great strength to say, yeah, we're going to rejoin. This was a massive error. We're going to go straight back in. We'll do everything we can. Might take a parliament to do it, but we're going to do it. That would have, for that part of the electorate, that would have large support, right?
You know what? I can really see what you're getting at, Ian. And I tell you what, I think Rishi plays into this as well. I think if you look back at Rishi and of course what we've had with Starmer, we have had zero decision makers. We've had a real, like, don't get me wrong, like, you know, probably both decent guys, but zero direction and leadership. And actually, God, it's not my politics. I couldn't think of a betrayal worse than rejoining the EU. But I think no matter what politics you may have, we are in this country crying out for direction and leadership in one direction of the other. Isn't it just terrifying and depressing that we have just had, and it's such a well-versed phrase now, but this absolute frozen managed decline, and it will be the thing that ultimately, I think, of course, the Mandelson scandal would have been the straw, if you like, but just the lack of leadership we have had. So you're right, we could get, and people will be terrified of this depending on their politics, we could get an Ed Miliband, we could get an Angela Rayner, and they could both turn around and say, you know what, you know what this country needs? This country needs to rejoin the EU.
Yeah, I can almost picture it. And I say this almost every day, Oscar. When you look at somebody like Donald Trump, and to a degree somebody like Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage has this, when the ship is sinking or something has hit the fan, you know what Trump's like. He'll stand up there and say, right, it's been a stinker of a couple of days, or he might even say it's been fine, nothing to see here. However, he will off the cuff, deliver a positive kind of message. It's onwards and upwards. What do we get out of number 10? A clinical press statement that I was just reading in the last section, which pretty much goes to the epicentre of everything that is wrong with Keir Starmer, this government and this party.
I would honestly urge and I'm sure they're busy and they have jobs and families to look after, etc. But if they can spare 15 minutes, go and watch Keir Starmer's press conference last Thursday. This was the one in Sussex, right? Yeah, it was stunningly bad. Yeah, and of course that was overshadowed by the context of Mandelson and him trying to save his skin. Yeah, but just listen to the vision and the context. It meant nothing. Yeah. There was nothing. It was this kind of word soup of community, sunshine, having an orange at half time at the football. It was terrifyingly bad. And whoever comes next, and in all likelihood it will not be my politics, but at the very least you have to expect some sort of direction and vision that is tangible and meaningful.
And interestingly, we're expecting a press conference from the Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar at about 2:30. This was an unscheduled press conference where he's likely to call for the Prime Minister to stand down. Now, that's significant, right? When one of your own in a fairly senior place makes that statement, that ball that was just starting to roll gathers new momentum.
That is very significant. And again, if I go back to the Boris days, I remember we'd had a typically very, very tough day. And we were kind of wrapping up to go home at the end of a very tough day, thinking, and this is the mindset, and I'm not making excuses for it. I'm not saying this is right and this is how a country should be run. But we kind of look at each other and go, right, we got through another day. And then right across the screen, we saw Rishi Sunak, Sajid Javid, resigning from government. And although this isn't quite that, the more prominent and more senior Labour politicians we see coming out the gate and saying Starmer's got to go, the quicker the quicker this speeds up.
Indeed. Well, I mean, it's not going away, we know that much. And feeding in to all of that, of course, is everything that's happened with Epstein and Andrew, now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Lots of growing calls for him to face a criminal probe as it emerges he passed on confidential reports, much like Mandelson, to Jeffrey Epstein in 2010 when he was the UK global trade envoy. Let's have a listen to something that happened earlier today, though. This is King Charles, who was heckled over his brother earlier this morning.
Charles! How long have you known about Andrew and Epstein? Have you been protecting Andrew from prosecution?
Yeah, the loyalists to the crown booing the man that shouted that out. But this is where we're at the moment. You've got some bloke in a crowd, King's on a walkabout. Previously that was all, full of the usual pomp and ceremony, a very exciting moment in whatever area the monarch ends up in. And that's the kind of questions. How long have you known about your brother who was monkeying around with a paedophile while also spewing secrets of the state?
I mean, this is the thing, both the royal family and our politics, Mandelson and Andrew, if you look at that, they are kind of two of the most central pillars of our society, government, royal family. And these two actors in Mandelson and Andrew have bet against the United Kingdom in cahoots with a paedophile. I mean, if you just break it down like that. So it cannot be. And this is where I don't have sympathy for Starmer. I do not have sympathy for Starmer on this because it's been handled atrociously. Yeah. And it's a matter of judgment. But it's in some ways, this crisis is so much bigger than than a prime minister, because trust in, institutions like a government and our royal family have been utterly broken over the last few weeks with these revelations. I mean, I found the Mandelson stuff where he was literally briefing against the government that he was in off the backs of the financial crisis, where, I'm sure many listeners' families and themselves, found real hardship. And they were betting against the United Kingdom and our interests, and that cuts the, and I hate it as a phrase, it's a bit of a cliche, but the fabric of our society. 100%. And so, the king, I'm almost surprised he's doing walkabouts at the moment, because it is, it maybe isn't the time to be doing that and exposing yourself to that. I mean, criminal investigations into Andrew, that probably feels like the next step. Yeah. I think the king and the people around him would have made the best of a very dire situation by stripping him of his titles when they did, because that was before last week's revelations. But honestly, where do they go from? It really is a challenging time for the royal family.
It would be something, wouldn't it, to see Mandelson and the former Prince Andrew sharing a prison cell in strange ways. I mean, man alive. I mean, that would be the greatest twist to all of this. Final story, got to be brief on this one, Oscar. Student loan debt interest accrued at a rate of £482 per second last year, far outstripping contributions made to clear the balance. Ollie Dugmore from the New Statesman magazine made this point on BBC's Newsnight.
Since I went to uni in 2012, just bear that figure in mind about my debt, 37.5 grand. Since I went to uni in 2012, the amount of interest, I did the sums before I got here, that I have accrued is £32,000. So was it missold to me when I was told it was going to cost me 9 grand a year? Yeah, I'd say so. On top of that, it's a regressive system. So if you're wealthy enough to pay the fees up front, to pay your 27k, you don't get charged interest. So if you're rich enough, you don't pay the same as me.
That was Question Time, of course, not Newsnight. Ollie Dugmore making that point. I mean, it's all up in the air. Look, I know you got kicked out of school when you were 12, Oscar, and never...
How did you know?
Never saw a university, but I obviously jest. But there is this... I mean, I put some of this down to the extraordinary pressure of trying to force kids who are best not placed in university but elsewhere, pressing them to go to university.
Yeah, that's the first stage of this. That's where the first betrayal, if you like, or at least very, very negative unintended consequences took place. But, pushing that to one side, okay, because a lot of people, including me, were told going to university was something that you should aspire to and do. And when you're a child, ultimately, you kind of take that on board and you feel pride when you do it. And I've known Ollie for quite a while. We have almost politics in opposite directions, but he is absolutely right. And actually, this is an issue, and I'm, just for your listeners and yourself, Ian, this is an issue that cuts across politics. There's a generation of people who ultimately feel like, and let's be clear about it, who feel almost like the victims of fraud. Because, the sums that Ollie laid out there, I had a maintenance loan as well. I'm in a similar place.
Yeah.
And that was not the agreement. And I honestly, I don't want to overcook it, but it is, it's a real shame and blight on this country, because there are a generation of people who did the right thing, who were told, they did what they were told they would do to progress their own lives, their families' lives, and ultimately, as I see it, they're a victim of fraud.
But it should be said, you were the first person, I understand, in history to get a woodwork degree from Oxbridge. So, I think that's, honestly, that's something you can stick on the business card, Oscar, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm a real mug, because I probably went to about 1 in 10 lectures because I was too busy doing all sorts of other things. So it's probably my fault.
Indeed. Wendy says, I like Oscar. More eye candy like that, please. There you go.
So another thing I didn't get at uni, but I didn't get a degree in that either.
There you go. I don't believe you for 1 second. Oscar, great to have you on with us as ever. Oscar Redrop, former advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister at number 10, knows what it's like when the chips are down in Downing Street. 0344 499 1000. How long can Keir Starmer hang on? This question is becoming more serious now, particularly since, as we just mentioned, it looks as if the Labour leader, Scottish Labour leader Anna Sower, is going to call for his resignation in an impromptu press conference at 2:30. We're going to be speaking to Peter Cardwell in a moment. Henry Murison is with us. Giles Dillnot's on as well. Crucially, you on the phones. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Keir Starmer has lost, what, another one? Yeah, another one has gone. We first, of course, had the issue of Morgan McSweeney. That was only 24 hours ago that he legged it. Remember, he's taken full responsibility. Morgan McSweeney has taken full responsibility for what happened with the Mandelson thing, which is slightly at odds with what Keir Starmer said when he wanted to be Labour leader.
And when they made mistakes, I carried the can.
I carry the can, he said, apart from on this occasion. And then, 24 hours later, Tim Allen, not that one, decided he was going to go as well. So he's lost his chief of staff in McSweeney and his director of communications in Allen. Shakespearean and all those kind of cliches that get wheeled out. Absolutely. Anna Sower, leader of Scottish Labour, giving an impromptu, unscheduled press conference within the hour. So in the next hour, I should say. So there's a lot happening here. How are you reading this? How long can Starmer hang on? Let's firstly speak to Peter Cardwell. Peter Cardwell, author of The Secret Life of Special Advisors, who knows a thing or two about what it looks like behind the scenes, Peter. But, of course, more poignantly and more presently, one of our senior presenters here at Talk, of course, and you've journalistically been around Westminster as well. So you cover quite a lot of bases on this one, Peter. Is it fair to say this is very dangerous territory here for Keir Starmer?
Very dangerous territory. We're 19 months in, Ian, and we've had 11 ministers go. The housing secretary went because of dodgy housing. The anti-corruption minister went because of an anti-corruption conviction in another country. There are 3 chiefs of staff now who have gone. There are 4 communications directors who have gone. He's about to appoint a 5th one. This is not good for Keir Starmer. He keeps blaming other people. Yeah. And the fact is that the Titanic didn't have an iceberg. The Titanic didn't have a comms problem. The Titanic had an iceberg problem. Yeah. And the point with Keir Starmer is he can't keep blaming other people. Morgan McSweeney blamed himself in his statement. He was very, very loyal. Less so from Tim Allen, only a 2-line statement there. And it didn't look as if Tim Allen, the communications director, was going yesterday. Now, today, he's gone. And you might wonder, hold on, why should we care about these people we haven't really heard of? Who's Tim Allen? Who's Morgan McSweeney? Actually, these are crucial people behind the scenes to how this government works. And people think, oh, is there a deputy chief of staff? Well, yes, there are. There are 2 of them, actually, who are now the acting chief of staff. But the chief of staff and the communications director, those are the 2 most crucial people in Downing Street.
Yeah.
After the Prime Minister.
Absolutely right. Of course, that's statement came from McSweeney yesterday, the Irish Svengali of Downing Street, as he was often referred to. Of course, no one's ever heard McSweeney speak, so we wanted to sort of bring this to life a little bit, so we got an uncannily sounding actor to voice his statement. Here it is.
After careful reflection, I have decided to resign from the government. The decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country and trust in politics itself. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment, and I take full responsibility for that advice.
Well, Peter, he could be in the same room as us, couldn't he?
Oh yes, certainly. Was that someone from Derry Girls?
We'll check what the invoice says.
Yeah, I expect perhaps not.
I expect perhaps not, yeah.
Yes.
But there it is. I mean, it was crafted in a way to sort of protect Keir Starmer. And it's interesting because if you go back to 2020, when Keir Starmer wanted to become the leader of the Labour Party, he was telling anyone who cared to listen that when it came to issues such as this was the approach.
And when they made mistakes, I carried the can.
I carry the can, he said, apart from yesterday and today when the two most senior people around him make mistakes and have to leave.
Exactly, and that may well have been what Keir Starmer did previously, but as Director of Public Prosecutions, although I can't really remember a time when that happened, but certainly as Prime Minister, that's not the case. Everyone else is to blame. He's the issue. The issue is a lack of leadership. Yep. The issue is a lack of direction. And Morgan McSweeney, people say, oh, he's this amazing kind of election winner. Well, not really. Labour certainly got a huge majority, and well done to him for that. But it was the fractiousness and the fact that the Conservative Party had done such a bad job. Certainly with Morgan McSweeney, he is a smart guy. He knew what Keir Starmer needed to do. In fact, he picked Keir Starmer, really, to be that candidate for his project. And I still don't know. I mean, as you say, I've been around politics for 20 years, journalist and as an insider, as a special advisor for the Conservatives. I don't know what Keir Starmer believes. And he's going to have to decide now. He's going to have to work out what he wants to do. He spoke to staff earlier today and said he wants to drive change forward. Well, what does that change actually mean?
Yeah, what does it actually mean?
Well, the manifesto, which simply had a picture of him in his shirt sleeves and the word change on the front, they haven't done a lot of that stuff. A lot of the change he's wanted to enact on welfare, for example, winter fuel allowance, he hasn't been able to do. And we've got Anna Sarwar, the leader of Labour in Scotland, doing a press conference in about an hour's time where lots of people saying that lots of respected journalists have been briefed that he is going to be calling for Keir Starmer to go. That is a significant person saying that, but we don't have any cabinet resignations yet. We don't have any other ministers resigning yet. But
this could
the next
be
48 hours, Ian, it'll be fine.
Yeah, who knows? You mentioned Tim Allen, by the way, not the bloke from Toy Story. He's now gone. Another fairly...
Home improvement. Number 10 needs a bit of home improvement.
Very good. Another sort of fairly anonymous character. He hasn't spoken much either, so we got another uncannily sounding voice actor to read his statement.
I have decided to stand down to allow a new number 10 team to be built. I wish the PM and his team every success.
Yeah, promise you it's not the same person, Peter, but there it is.
I think that is uncanny. I've actually spoken to both Morgan McSweeney and Tim Allen in the past, and it's just like they're here.
It's just like they're here, isn't it? Listen, we will see how this runs. Peter, we are going to speak again. He's back on Talk very soon. Peter Cardwell with us on the programme. Let's get a word on this from Henry Murison, who is, of course, the Chief Executive of the Northern Powerhouse Partnership, former Labour staffer as well. I mean, to say Labour have had better weeks doesn't really touch it, Henry.
I think it could be considered to be a pretty dismal week politically, and I think that puts a focus right on what's the Prime Minister's vision, objectives, what does he want to achieve. I think he's got some very strong people now stepping into the breach. Vidya and Jill, his new sort of co-chiefs of staff, both very competent, experienced people. So it's not like number 10 is going to fall apart at the seams, right? If anything, they might be better suited to that role than the predecessor was, because of their focus on getting things done in government, and rather than being in the kind of campaign space, which obviously was where Morgan McSweeney, who I worked with in his earlier career, is obviously undoubtedly an expert and a strong performer, but that doesn't necessarily make you a good chief of staff. And obviously, as many haven't necessarily noticed, he did step down as Keir's chief of staff previously in opposition. So this is the second time he's resigned. So I think there was always a challenge, which was that as important as Morgan was to the Prime Minister, I'm not sure Chief of Staff was ever necessarily the best job for him.
Is there just a kind of an irredeemable journey of travel here, though, that sort of happens? You know, sometimes it might be unfair, sometimes it's kind of self-constructed almost, but once that trajectory has been set and that kind of ball, sort of with Harrison Ford running away from it, has started to roll down the tracks, there's not a lot you can do. Regardless, there's not a lot you can do. And now we've got Anas Sarwar, leader of Scottish Labour, speaking at around about 2:30 this afternoon, likely to say he thinks Mr Starmer should quit. I'm sure he will sugarcoat that with lots of praise and all the rest of it. But when you have senior figures start to call for the Prime Minister to go, who's just lost in 24 hours 2 senior people, it's curtains, isn't it, for Starmer?
I think it's certainly looking challenging, and I would say that I don't actually think Anas Sarwar or Tim Allen, as much as I might care about these developments, and I know some of these people, I don't think the general public really give. I
think that's true.
I do think Anas Sarwar, who is the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, a very significant figure, not just in Scottish politics but in UK politics, bluntly one of Keir Starmer's greatest allies and friends in politics. Like Anas and Keir are genuinely, personally very close and work together very effectively. If what's being reported, I think, by your colleagues at the Times, by other news organisations, is indeed correct, and he is going to call for the Prime Minister to go, I think that is a significant development. And obviously my area of expertise is the kind of the emerging kind of way in which British politics works, the power of the nations and the devolved assemblies, including the Scottish Parliament, the power of our mayors. And obviously we've seen the Andy Burnham saga play out only a few weeks ago in the context of Keir's leadership. I think that never mind Andy Burnham wanting to come back to Parliament, never mind Morgan stepping down, never mind Peter's, Mandelson's problems, Anas Sarwar deciding he no longer has confidence in the Prime Minister is a genuine issue for the Prime Minister. And particularly because many Scottish Labour MPs are as loyal or more loyal to Anas Sarwar, who in many cases directly campaigned for and secured their seats in Parliament. I think it's very likely there are now a big block of MPs, basically a big chunk of them from Scotland, who will have a significant problem with the Prime Minister remaining in post. And so as much as I might think lots of things Keir Starmer are doing is good, that there are many parts of the government's agenda that have been really positive and welcomed by the wider business community, I don't think you can defy political gravity. And that is the challenge the Prime Minister will have to respond to, is that what is he going to do about Anas's call for him to go, and how is he going to respond to that? Because that is the most genuinely threatening thing that's happened in the last few weeks.
Correct.
A real potential that it will lead to a domino effect, and that you will end up seeing a challenge which during a by-election you wouldn't have expected someone to challenge the Prime Minister in the middle of a campaign against reform. But I think there is now a strong chance that someone might indeed try and do that. We will watch with interest, as I always say, popcorn at the ready and all the rest of it. It wasn't so serious. Henry, thank you as ever. Always good to talk. Henry Murison, Chief Executive of the Northern Powerhouse, is a former Labour staffer as well. There is a wider point here as well. This is something that came out of, believe it or not, Alistair Campbell, who does a podcast with Rory Stewart called The Rest is Politics, said this. Now, this is all about really the difficulty in governing in the 21st century. So you might, I'm sure there's lots of you that aren't particular fanboys of Alistair Campbell, but what he says here does resonate a bit. Have a listen.
Because of the nature of our politics, the quality, if you like, of our politicians and the political gene pool, the nihilism of much of the mainstream media, the anarchy of social media, with dissonance, hypocrisy, short-termism, naivety, industrialised rage and willful ignorance off the scale, that we're becoming almost ungovernable, that neither the parties nor the public are really prepared to face up to the big things that need to happen to turn this country around.
I think there's a whole show in what he just said there. We're ungovernable. Let's speak with Giles Dilnot, editor of Conservative Home, also worked there in fairly senior advisory roles in the last Conservative administration. Just on that point that Campbell says there, Giles, I mean, is he onto something?
No, he's not just onto something, he's right. We have got into a situation where the job of Prime Minister is extremely difficult to do and do well, and we have not seen people supplied to that post who can cope with it well. So he's definitely onto something. My point would be, the thought is late in coming to you, Alistair.
Yes.
We did try to mention this, that, Labour came in and campaigned for the 2024 general election, which they won with a large majority, although thin, because they weren't the Tories, because they had convinced themselves with their own electioneering that the problem with governing was simply that Tories were doing it. And the fact was that just simply wasn't the case. It is extremely difficult to do government. It shouldn't be. I think there's a recognition within the Tory party, certainly Kemi talks about it a lot, is that we need to break and rebuild a broken system, a broken political system that has evolved and ossified and made real change. But the one point I will pick up on, all of us, and I include myself in this as a member of the public, all of us have to understand we really aren't facing up to the things that will need to be done and there's no more kicking it down the road. That's the problem. We've got to a point where Labour are failing in exactly the same way that we did, and worse, because they have not accepted that, and their backbenchers won't accept. Here are some things that you need to do that are deeply unpopular but absolutely essential.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on there, Giles, and you're right in your first assessment that Labour came in and we all kind of thought, wow, they're going to turn up with this big sort of the bumper book of policy and how to do business.
There was nothing there.
There was literally nothing there, frighteningly so. I mean, I don't expect any new government to have the entire thing worked out, but there was nothing there, and they genuinely thought all we've got to do is not be the Tories, and they were the chief recipient of Tory ineptitude.
Do you remember that, in the few weeks afterwards, one of the charges laid at the Conservatives lying there bloodied and bruised, and in many cases people listening will say deservedly so, on the floor, they were saying, well, this is it, Labour in for a decade now.
Yeah.
Well, nobody expected them to be this bad this quick.
Indeed, this quick. Yeah, go on, Giles.
Well, further and faster, yeah. Further and faster. The problem with offering change is it works both ways. And if the change you end up offering, which you didn't have much in the tin, as it turns out to offer, is worse, then you've got a serious problem.
Indeed.
But I don't know that we're going to head to an election anytime soon.
No, and there's the issue, isn't it? And it should be said as well that one of the big tickets that they came in on, and never-ending speeches from senior Labour frontbenchers pre the last election, talking about things like corruption. That's a Tory thing. That's a Tory thing. And here we are sitting on what is arguably one of the biggest stories in certainly anything in our generation Giles has seen. And you've got to go way back to find anything that touches royalty. It touches senior cabinet ministers and advisors in Mandelson and the like, and of course the judgment of past and, as it turns out, current prime ministers. And this is the problem he's got. And when Anasawa announces a press conference, he might not be a household name to everyone, but he is within Labour a senior figure. It looks as if he's going to suggest Mr Starmer should stand down. I mean, is that survivable?
I don't think so. I mean, I think loads of people have said Starmer's toast. I said that some time ago, and we hadn't even got to Mandelson yet. And just remember, the thing is, Mandelson appointment was a risk. He knew it was a risk. Risks, if they pay off, you're a genius.
Yeah.
If they don't, you're a fool. And the problem is it didn't work out, and lots of people are going, we could have told you that. The fact here is that we do feel like in endgame, but not the end of the Labour government. Now, they're in a terrible situation because there is plenty of case to make that things would get worse if you replace Starmer.
Well,
there
right.
are all sorts of things that you can argue that things would get worse if you replace Starmer. Having said that, I don't see how... There's certainly no way of him turning this around and becoming popular again, and that credibility has gone. He doesn't look like a man up to the job, however much integrity he may have. And the fact is, there are lots of things where we can point out and go, well, that wasn't very much integrity, was it?
Yeah.
So I think he's in real trouble. Whether Labour are in trouble now, I think, is a moot point. There is no constitutional reason why they have to have an election right now. I also think, and I'll be honest about it, and I've said this, however well Kemi is doing, and I think she is doing extremely well, job of opposition, that doesn't mean the Conservative brand is doing well at the moment. Yep. I'm not sure we'd want an election right now. Reform might. But I don't know that we would either. But I do think that there will be a lot of push for going, care today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah, that sums it up. Giles, thank you as ever. We'll speak again soon. Giles Dilnot, journalist and editor of Conservative Home. Thank you to him. Over to you, 0344 499 1000.
So there's some people in society who believe that, the flag is the symbol of the country, we should be proud of it, we should wave it, and, I'm one of those. People who are apologists for the British Empire, for apologists for how we've been in the past, and it's almost a symbol of national shame to them. It's kind of like, well, we flew that flag. Oh, I'm not sure about this one.
The whole national shame thing, I believe that actually that's a sort of a greater agenda going on, to be honest with you. It's apologist nature of of so many successive governments now who have sort of almost been forced to be embarrassed by our great British history.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Brad says, bit of a correction here. McSweeney didn't say he takes full responsibility. He said he takes full responsibility for that advice. There's a difference. Advisors advise, ministers take decisions. That is true. So he's kind of claiming, well, he got advice on it. I don't know how much you read into that, however. If he is the person advising, yes, they do advise. He's saying, essentially, he got advice from somebody else to advise. I mean, where does the ball stop, as it were? Ian in Wales says, rather arrogant of Starmer to announce he's not standing down before talking to his MPs. Yeah, well, I think he'd have to if he was standing down. Paul's in Manchester. Paul, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
I don't think Morgan McSweeney should have resigned, my friend. If I say to you, Ian, or anyone, go and rob a bank, and you rob a bank and get caught, then that isn't my fault. I've just planted the seed in your head to rob a bank. Now,
yes, but if you're employed specifically to tell me, why should I rob a bank, and you are the head of robbing bank information, then that would be a different vibe, right?
Yeah.
Then I could blame you.
If I plant the seed in your head for you to rob a bank, or anyone, and you rob a bank, that isn't my fault.
No, but I think you missed what I said, though. If you're as an advisor and you are charged specifically with... But by the way, don't get me wrong, this is Starmer's decision, not McSweeney's, but McSweeney's advice was clearly a bit iffy, right?
But if he didn't know about Mandelson's past, and he planted the seed into Starmer's head to make him... But
if he didn't know, then he should have been fired for incompetence if he didn't know, because you could have Googled it.
Oh, yeah, Google. Yeah, but if he said that... It's a funny subject, to be fair, Ian. If he said, make him ambassador to the United States, and he didn't, and we don't know if he did or he didn't, know about Mandelson's...
Well, he was one of Mandelson's closest friends. So this man, if Morgan McSweeney went on Mastermind, his specialised subject would be Peter Mandelson. So there's that, for a start. There's also the fact that lots of areas of, one would assume, security and goodness knows who else would have advised him. So he wanted his friend to be the ambassador, right?
Yeah.
So he wanted his friend. So the advice he was giving the Prime Minister, some might reasonably argue, was always going to be tainted because he had a bias in the decision-making process.
Yeah, of course. Don't forget, Lammy went on Mastermind as well, Ian.
He did. That didn't end well, did it? Love it. Paul, thank you very much indeed for that. Yvonne says, so Keir wants to continue on to keep changing the country. To what? Please, no more. We can't take any more of this man's changes. But what does change look like? If Labour were to, if they opened it up and you had people to start to run, Angela Rayner, could she run? Well, she's got to sort her tax affairs out first, so she might not even be able to run in the big race. Ed Miliband, could Ed Miliband, seriously, a bloke that's previously lost an election when he was Labour leader? I can't imagine that's good. And Wes Streeting can't stand because he's 12. So there is that. The choice will widen if it gets to that stage. Will Starmer step down? Because stepping down doesn't mean there's a general election. Matt in Cheshire, what are you making of it all? How long can Starmer hang on for? Afternoon.
Probably the end of the week, or maybe the end of today. Actually, if Salah makes that speech today, we could be in for one of those 10 o'clock type things where we all cheer.
When Thatcher was in Paris, is that what you're thinking of there?
I'm just thinking, like, 10 o'clock, you hear everybody going, "Hey!" all over the country.
Yeah, maybe we'll be out with our saucepans again, like it was, COVID NHS 2.2.
When your guest earlier on from Conservative Home, he said nobody had any idea that they would govern this badly. I did, because I know who Jonathan Reynolds is. Mm-hmm. I know who Angela Rayner is. I know who Lucy Powell is. So if the London-based media had any idea how clueless these people were in their own constituencies, they would know that as a collective, they would be even more shocking.
Yes, well, but of course the London-based media don't see that because they have a weird visor that they wear before they knock out any copy or broadcast. And, of course, all their iSense, their reporting comes via the conduit of this slightly iffy. It's not even a lefty media thing. It's just a refusal to see a wider picture. Remember when Andrew Marr went on Question Time after Starmer got elected, saying, it appears we are finally an island of some sanity and peace. And this was Starmer he was talking about, a journalist with decades of experience. Matt, I've got to stop there. The news is upon us. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Let's get the headlines at 2 o'clock.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
What an amazing couple of days. This is exactly the right time to be on air talking to you about the big issues of the day. We are, of course, reflecting on a curious, tumultuous and, as far as Keir Starmer's concerned, a very much unwanted time in power. His Director of Communications has resigned today. That's a fellow called Tim Allen, not that one, as I keep saying. He's quit. This is just, well, less than a day, frankly, after Morgan McSweeney departed as his Chief of Staff. How much longer can Keir Starmer hang on? Serious question. Also this afternoon, it's been revealed the number of migrants crossing the Channel on small boats under Starmer is soon to exceed that of any previous Prime Minister ever. We're looking at almost 66,000 migrants have reached Britain across the Channel since Labour won election. That's just 19 months ago, by the way. We're looking at about 800 people a week arriving on a boat and pitching up in the UK. It doesn't matter whether you're left or right. There's no one with a straight face that can say that is acceptable. And also it's been found that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor leaked trade envoy reports to Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this is beyond anything you'd see on Netflix. He passed on an email containing at least 4 assessments in 2010 when he was acting as the UK Global Trade Envoy. We'll have more on that as well. Lots to get through. 0344 499 1000. This has come from Gary, who says, ironically, the fact that Starmer is so bad at his job and Labour are doing so badly in the polls means the PM can actually stay in office for his full 5 years if he wants to, just by threatening his own party with a snap election if anyone challenges his leadership. It's a good point. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas, and the turkeys on his front and back benches all know that after a snap general election they would at best be sitting on the opposition back benches for the foreseeable future, or worse, looking for a new job, so they would back down. There's really genuinely something in that. I mean, you think all of these people are rather noble and they have a sort of ethical radar that would preclude them from doing anything purely in self-interest. I mean, like a sort of socialist is a different top-tier breed to anyone else. They've dined out on those kind of images. Not true. Gary is correct. There'll be some of them thinking, I got in with a wafer-thin majority, and frankly, that's it. I'm going nowhere. I'm going nowhere. I want to keep my job. You're right, Finn. 034449. Finn, our producer, sat up like a meerkat then. I thought, did I just swear? Maybe I did, inadvertently. We are talking about Keir Starmer and the Labour government, by the way. And that story that I touched on, more small migrant boats are set to come to Britain under Starmer than under any previous Prime Minister. We're looking at 66,000 migrants across the Channel since Labour took power just 19 months ago. And as I said a second back, that's 800 a week. Let's speak with Sarah Pochin, MP, Reform MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Afternoon to you, Sarah.
Good afternoon. It's lovely to join you this afternoon from the NEC here in Birmingham.
Indeed. And before we get into the other business, there's a reform... There's so many conferences happening this afternoon. There's a reform conference happening at 3 o'clock. Tell me you're going to announce Keir Starmer as your new MP. Is that what's going to happen? He's crossing the floor. He's had enough. He can't take it anymore and he's as mad as hell.
Well, I can tell you one thing for certain, and that is we would not be taking Keir Starmer. That won't come as a surprise to anybody. But yes, we are here in Birmingham for a wonderful reform rally. It's time for reform. We're going live at 3 o'clock. And yes, there will be some big announcements from our wonderful leader, Nigel Farage.
Interesting. No more clues on that front, I'm assuming, Sarah.
Absolutely not. My lips are sealed.
Right. Is Kate Hoey there? Can I just ask that?
Oh, I wouldn't know. There's thousands of people here. Yeah. I haven't seen her.
OK, I'm just thinking aloud, as you would expect, nothing less. And also, bound to just quickly get your view as well on what's going on in number 10. When we hear about people being the architects of their own downfall, these guys have got a PhD in it.
Look, you know, we thought we'd seen absolute chaos at its highest under the Conservatives, didn't we? Particularly at the end, you know, one Prime Minister after another, and, you know, all the shenanigans that were going on in Number 10 that so upset the British people. And Labour came in saying that they would be different, saying that they wouldn't be dealing in corruption, in fraud, in all the things that we're now seeing coming out from this Labour government. It's an absolute disgrace. And once again, the British people have been let down by the ruling party, and I think what's quite clear now is that we've seen an absolute decimation of the Conservatives, Labour in chaos. The only party that people are turning to now to run this country, the only party giving people hope, is Reform.
And there is certainly, you know, your star is rising, and those polls are very consistent, of course, in your favour. Is that moment of takeover, as you guys would like to see it, is that likely to happen, though, before 2029? Because Labour can change their leader. Doesn't mean there's going to be a general election, Sarah.
That's right, and of course we at Reform would love Keir Starmer to stay in place as long as possible. He's doing so much damage. He's a brilliant advert for Nigel Farage and a future government. But and yes, they can change their leader and they can hang out until 2029. What will happen potentially, however, is that if the markets get rattled, then there will be a general election. And the other thing, of course, is they can install Angela Rayner, or they can install Wes Streeting, although he seems to have been a friend of Mandelson as well. But whoever it is they put in there potentially does not have the mandate of the British people. It's not the person that they thought was going to be leading this country. So really they should be calling a general election.
And let's just bring this back to the story we originally asked you to come on to talk about, because, you know, a lot of people saying Keir Starmer's done a bad job. What can he claim as some kind of success? Well, I don't know if you've seen the numbers, Sarah. We can be very cynical about Keir Starmer, but he's award-winning, our Prime Minister, award-winning and being the head honcho when a record number of illegal migrants crossed the Channel. I mean, he's up to 66,000. That's amazing. He should be on the 1% club, this man.
And look, the really serious point here is that those 66,000, and let's face it, it's probably an awful lot more than that. The size of our current British Army is 62,000. So in the time that Labour have been here, more people have come illegally. Young men, fighting-age men, men that do not share our culture have come to our country. And we are now facing a situation where our army is smaller than the amount of illegal migrants that have come here under this Labour government.
But don't forget, he's smashing the gangs, Sarah. He's smashing the gangs and he's closing the hotels. So give the man a break, right?
Well, you know what? It's all about the will of the government. Any government can smash those gangs, any government can turn back those boats, but if you don't have the will of the government to do it, it won't happen. When Reform get in, we will leave the ECHR, we will bin all of this Human Rights Act, Refugee Act. We will make sure that those people are captured on the beaches, deported, dealt with at a deportation centre, and they will never ever be allowed to apply for British citizenship. Again, it is about the will of the government to do it. It can be done. They've done it in Italy. They've done it in Australia. We can do it here.
You're absolutely bang on about the will. And if you've got the will, it's in your DNA. Things can happen. But, of course, with this lot, it isn't. Sarah, thank you very much. We look forward to talking again soon. Good luck with the big announcements this afternoon over there at that Reform conference in Birmingham. She did say there a couple of big announcements. Hardly a week goes by when Reform don't make a couple of big announcements. What does that mean for you? Are Reform I'm speaking to so many voices in this area and lots of support for Reform. Some of it, I have to say, in the interest of just basic observation, some of it is because they are not the Tories or Labour. So not necessarily philosophically wed to the specifics of Reform, but enamoured by the idea that it's a new party and what's gone before, this kind of uni-party thing, and there's something in that, is just, you know, we need a clean broom and a completely different approach to how governments do business, a recalibration of our systems. This one in from Paul, the clairvoyant in Belfast, who says Starmer will meet his MPs this evening and resign shortly afterwards. Thank you, Paul. Can we get that on the news at 3, please? He's going. Paul the Clairvoyant in Belfast. Thank you. This is William down in London. What are you thinking, William? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian, and the great British public. Ian, I am so glad that these are the final days, maybe weeks, of Keir Starmer.
Interesting.
I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased.
Yeah, but what happens to who replaces him, though? Here's the bigger problem in many respects.
The whole front bench, Peter, Ian, sorry, the whole front bench of the Labour Party is incompetent. Look at the decisions they've been making.
Yeah.
I totally disagree with you and Peter, who I've got a lot great respect for. Obviously, you know, being advisors, Peter. But when he says that Morgan McSweeney is a really clever guy, what about all these decisions that they've made? But here's the funny thing. You've touched on something brilliant there, William. They have a very different idea of what is clever, and they work in this absolutely lethal echo chamber, which goes back to the point I was just making about recalibrating how politics is done. So they write clinical press releases and they let them out there and think that that is enough. They think that Keir Starmer, because he's not a Tory, that is enough. They think that, you know, by getting Morgan McSweeney, who wasn't really employed as such by Starmer in the conventional sense, but almost he found Starmer and put himself into that position because people like him have been, like Mandelson before him, and you know, one was a protege of the other. They've kind of commanded this bizarre respect of, well, you might not like them, but God, they're brilliant. And I wonder, are they really? If they're that brilliant, why is one of them facing prison and the other has just lost his job? Well, Ian, can I come back to you? You keep saying they're brilliant and they're writing these statements for the Prime Minister.
No, I'm not saying that's... I'm saying it's not brilliant.
Yeah, because they have got no reality of what really is happening in their country. Yes. They've got no reality in what's going on in the country. When have they ever got a train or a bus? When have they ever got to go to work? You know, it's all money orientated. They're all getting lots and lots of money for producing little things at the detriment of the British public. Ian, no one...
Well, I don't know if they're getting... I mean, is it a money? I mean, they get paid their wages.
Of course they're getting plenty of money, Ian, much more money than the average...
Well, they might do, but I mean, they have... If they were doing the job properly, they'd be in very senior jobs, right? If you're the Chief of Staff in Downing Street, that's a big gig, right? Probably earning more than the Prime Minister.
Ian, if you're getting 70, 80, 90, £100,000 a year, you're not doing too bad. You're getting...
But I don't think they're claiming that. I'm making the point that they're... The bit that's skew-if, yeah, we could argue about the money, whether they should be paid enough, but it's their thinking. They're part of a template, almost like somebody opened a pack of these people, whether they're Tories or Labour. They have a similar way of thinking. They know better than the British public. They know stuff we don't know, and it might not always be good, but they think they're onto something, and they all congratulate each other on these things, William. Pat each other on the back. It's a great press release, Michael, a fabulous thing you put out today. But there is nothing. There's no... It's just a vacuous place of nothingness. Nothing is happening. There's no real thought.
Ian, please, Ian. They're all out of touch with the British public.
Yeah, that's literally the point I'm making.
£40,000 not being paid, £40,000 for the house. We'd all be banged up, Ian, if we weren't paying that. Everyone, Ian, doing things that the public don't want. What is going on here?
Because they think that they know what the public... They think they know better than what the public want.
No, Ian, we are being betrayed by all these political...
Yes. No, I'm not arguing that point. I'm making the point that they're making.
Yes, and when they get the sack or leave or resign, they all get big money to cover that. Look at Mandelson, got 45 grand apparently.
Yeah.
He should never have been ambassador, Ian. He should never have been ambassador with his track record, and we all knew about it.
Absolutely right.
Even a thicko like me, Ian, we knew about this guy.
Hey, listen, don't sell yourself down.
Where's Tony Blair, Ian? Where is Tony Blair? He hasn't said anything. Where is Tony Blair?
I think he's perhaps in hiding at the moment because, you know, Tony Blair links quite a lot of all of this stuff. I mean, and William, thank you very much for your call, and it was a great call, by the way. 0344 499 1000. They really thought in Starmer that they could... Blair in his early days, you know, was this young pretender, and he was young and he was bright and he could communicate. Oddly, I never thought he was that great on that front, but everybody else seemed to think that. It was generally across party. They seemed to go, well, this guy, might not agree with him, but he's good. I don't think Starmer was ever that. He was never that. And the idea that they thought this is the man to make it all happen, not true. 0344 499 1000.
Calamity Lammy? I mean, seriously, does anyone believe that he could be Prime Minister of our country? Angela Rayner, who is still under investigation from HMRC for failing to pay her taxes. And then you've got Wes Streeting, who supposedly is the grown-up, but he was the bloke who organised Peter Mandelson's stag do and is in this up to his neck. So it's a group of completely terrible candidates. None of these people, frankly, are capable of arresting the decline that the country is in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
David in the Cotswolds says everyone knows that Labour was McSweeney's project and Starmer was McSweeney's puppet. Technically, the actual PM has resigned and has left the building. Starmer's resignation is just a pantomime, says David. Something in that. Mr. Wilson says, Ian, when the King stripped Randy Andy of his titles way back when, did the King have advanced knowledge of the Epstein files at the time? I'm willing to bet he did. What are your thoughts? I don't know if he'd have had advanced knowledge on everything that's been released since, because I don't think anybody had real advanced knowledge, but he would have known slightly more than the rest of us about his brother's involvement with Epstein and the length of time, despite what he told, what's her name on Newsnight, Emily Maitlis on Newsnight, when he's, no, I didn't have anything more to do with him, which was a lie, a complete lie. I think the King would have been aware of that. Now, who remembers, and it's a very serious question, cast your mind back, who remembers when this happened?
Total number of votes cast in favour of leave was 17,410,742. This means that the UK has voted to leave the European Union.
Well, that was what the Democratic vote said. Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, surely remembers that day. It was probably the worst day of his entire life, frankly. Now, the London Mayor has stated that his ultimate goal is to reverse Brexit. Of course it is. It always has been. And remember, of course, this is what he said about a second referendum.
So what I'm saying to the government is, for the first time, the British public should have a say on the outcome of those negotiations, including the option of staying in the EU.
I mean, this essentially just, translation of all of that is, let's just obliterate the idea of democratic elections. I mean, that's a case for that he's making. Liam Deacon is communication consultant, former head of press for the Brexit Party. I suppose we can file this, Liam, when it comes to Khan, at least, under no surprise there, then.
Yeah, indeed. God, that clip you played just highlights what a sort of slippery character he is, isn't he? Yeah. You know, we'll have a referendum on the outcome, including reversing the whole bloody thing. Like, he's just so slippery and disingenuous, isn't he? But, like, I'll make a sort of surprising point here, Ian. I do sort of, in a weird way, admire his consistency and candour here, because I think we all know what Sir Keir Starmer thinks about this, but he just doesn't say it. Do you know what I mean? Like, his advisors are telling him, "Oh, have you seen the polling? Oh, remember our manifesto pledges?" And he's very calculated, and he only says things that people like Morgan McSweeney, well, formerly, allowed him to say on this. And he's been very careful. And his whole sort of Brexit reset has been dragging us towards the orbit of the EU in some quite meaningful ways, which we can get into later. But without ever sort of being honest about it, being upfront. He said, no, I'm sticking to my manifesto commitments to not join the single market or the customs union. I support the vote. At least Khan just has the sort of gumph to come out and say what him and most Labour people are thinking, and, to be honest, quietly working towards. So I think we could admire him on that one. But there is this interesting point as well, though, that we have to remember. London was the only major region of England to vote to stay in the EU. That's, you know, cities like Sheffield voted to stay in, which surprised people. The west of England voted for Brexit. Sorry, but London really was an outlier. And so he's always used Brexit. I remember going way back 10 years ago, listening to interviews with him when he was calling for, you know, more autonomy for London to deal with the EU. And he'd always couch it around things like financial services and skills and things like that. But he basically was using Brexit as a springboard to get more power for himself as mayor. And to pull London away from the rest of the country. So, you know, it's very in Sir Sadiq Khan's interest to do this, because he knows that it's a potential power base for him.
True. Is there Yeah, I was just going to add to that, Liam. And if I was Labour, or if I was one of the many people that would like to take over from Keir Starmer, we've obviously got the Rayners and the Miliband's and people like that. Wouldn't their best option be to adopt a rejoin policy, so they could hoover up all the green lot, one or two Lib Dems and any old floating lefty that might be out there, to go with the, we're going to rejoin, we think it's been a disaster, so we're going back in, vote for us. Would that not be a better policy collectively of the left?
So I think it's exactly the right question that we need to be asking in this moment. So Morgan McSweeney, who obviously left the government yesterday, was one of the few people in the Labour Party calling for Labour to understand their traditional base, the working class, largely white regional people in post-industrial towns who birthed the Labour Party. And he was calling for them to re-engage with them, okay? And that's why him and people, that's why we had Shabana Mahmood, that's why we had a crackdown on asylum and immigration and things like that. And Morgan McSweeney, he has some connections to the Blue Labour part, and he basically wanted to keep talking to that bit of the nation. Sadiq Khan has a different vision for Labour politics, right? As you say, that actually probably makes more sense in many ways now. Sadiq Khan's vision for Labour politics is public sector workers, recent immigrants, minority groups, university educated, very liberal privileged people. That's the sort of new Labour voting coalition, not industrial people working with their hands and things like that. And so, one does have to question, is it worth Labour pursuing the sort of more nationalistic, old school working class vote? Actually, those people have long fled the nest. They're not going to vote Labour. Most of them are switching to voting Nigel Farage, having voted for Boris Johnson now. So maybe it is Sadiq Khan's vision of Labour that we're looking at now in the future, and it does make more sense to start doing that. That's bad news for the Liberal Democrats. That's probably bad news for the Greens as well, because they'll start moving into that sort of space. But I do think there's sort of an honesty about it. And yes, this is the right time to ask that question, with Morgan McSweeney walking the plank yesterday rather unceremoniously. So, yeah, are Labour going to pivot? And maybe Sadiq Khan's chosen this moment to make these comments to try and pivot the Labour Party and pull him in this direction. Because the thing is, as well, we know that most Labour MPs agree with him. Most Labour MPs do not represent the views that Morgan McSweeney and Sir Keir Starmer tried to tell the nation at the last general election they represented. There was a lot of dishonesty there.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's bring it back to this Starmer reset. One thing I wanted to highlight. I was going through it actually before this interview. What was this Starmer reset? What has Starmer actually done? One of the things I actually didn't realise in this is quite how nefarious and I think dishonest Starmer's EU reset has been, and there's not been much coverage of this. Part of it was sort of dynamic alignment on energy, and we're staying within the EU's energy sort of policies, and that means we have to continue to promote renewables, and we have to continue to hit target shares for renewables as part. So basically, it locks us into a net zero policy. It locks us in. So there's so many. A lot of coverage was given to the fishing sellout. A lot of coverage was given to the phytosanitary deal, but not much was given to this energy thing. So whether or not Starmer is sort of, I'll just bring it back to the beginning here. Whether or not Starmer is as honest as Sadiq Khan, that he's working long term towards getting us back in the EU. I think actually, if you look at his actions, Starmer is doing exactly what Sadiq Khan wants him to do. He's locking us into net zero policy. I mean, the breadth and the depth of the Brexit betrayal that we have had is just exhausting.
Yes, it is. And much of it, as I'm sure you're ahead of me on all of this, as you know, we never really left in so many respects. And what's happened in those areas, you mentioned things like energy and green energy in particular, Starmer has kind of puffed it up and made those agreements even more solid, which leaves them and any future government in that kind of sort of Fabian-esque, irredeemable place where, well, the system's in place now, we can't undo it. On that point, listen, Liam, great to have you on as ever. Very thorough stuff from Liam Deacon. He's former head of press at the Brexit Party. Thank you to him. We are going to be hearing from the Scottish Labour leader within a few moments, we think, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Couple of comments from you before we cross to that Anas Sawa news conference. It's always interesting, isn't it, when all the networks say Anas Sawa news conference happening shortly. And most people are going, who the heck is Anas Sawa? He is the leader of Scottish Labour, not the biggest household name. He's a very pleasant guy, by the way. I met him years ago before he did. I think he's a former dentist. I don't know, I'm sure we could have some, headline writers can have some fun with that. But he's certainly pulling them out this afternoon. Hey, when it comes to comments that could affect the future of the country, because we understand that he's going to suggest, and I'm sure he will do this politely because he's friends with Keir Starmer, we understand that he's going to suggest Mr Starmer he's done. He's done. I don't know what form that will take, but it looks as if he's going to call on the Prime Minister to resign. We will see. Sam Coates, who's the political editor, I think he is, over there. Is that right? Political editor at Sky News? That would sound about right. He posted a photo on his X account, which I thought was rather amusing, of a giant shredding van outside Downing Street this weekend. Now, of course, the giant shredding van probably appears a couple of times a week in big areas of government, particularly Downing Street, where that stuff is shredded under the watchful gaze of security people and goodness knows what else. But the timing of seeing that thing parked outside Downing Street when we are talking about former ministers and senior head honchos of their time, like Mandelson, who've been spewing what could be very sensitive, state-sensitive information to an outside source, in this case, a convicted paedophile. I mean, this will be a big story anyway. Let's cross then to that press conference in Glasgow. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sower.
Without pain, as I have a genuine friendship with Keir Starmer. But my first priority and my first loyalty is to my country, Scotland. And I am not willing to sacrifice Scotland's NHS, our schools, our communities, our towns, cities, villages and islands to a third decade of an SNP government. That's why the distraction needs to end and the leadership in Downing Street has to change. It is so obvious that we desperately need change in Scotland. And in 3 months' time, the opportunity to get rid of a failing SNP government is one that is too important to be missed. We cannot allow the failures at the heart of Downing Street to mean the failures continue here in Scotland. Because the election in May is not without consequence for the lives of Scots. We have an NHS crisis where too many Scots can't access the treatment they need and when they need it. We have a housing emergency with more than 10,000 Scottish children homeless right now. And we have too many young people not feeling safe at school or on our streets or missing out on the opportunities they deserve. And we have an SNP government that is addicted to secrecy and cover-ups with devastating consequences. That's why I have to be honest about failure wherever I see it. The situation in Downing Street is not good enough. There have been too many mistakes. They promised they were going to be different, but too much has happened. Have there been good things? Of course there have, many of them, but no one knows them and no one can hear them because they're being drowned out. That's why it cannot continue. I am proud to have played my part in removing a Tory government that was doing so much damage to Scotland. And having a Labour government matters. I am proud of my Scottish Labour MPs who did the hard work, persuaded our fellow Scots, ran a historic and successful campaign, and who have spent every day since fighting for Scotland's interests. I'm proud of these Scottish Labour ministers serving at every level of government, delivering for Scotland. I want them to stay in government because I said right at the start that my first priority and my first loyalty is to my country, Scotland. That's why they must continue to defend and protect Scotland's interests. Keir Starmer is a decent man, and it is no secret that I've always got on well with him, and he has dedicated his life to public service. I have also dedicated myself to public service, and I need to decide what I'm willing to accept and what I'm willing to tolerate. The people of this great country, Scotland, are crying out for competent government, for transparency, for honesty and for delivery. They want to see politics that is open and accountable. They want to see leaders who put the national interest before themselves. That is the standard I will always apply. In 3 months, we have an election that must be about one thing and one thing only: Scotland. That is my duty, that is my priority, that is my loyalty, and that is Scotland's choice. Thank you. I'll open up for some questions. I'll take Glenn Campbell from the BBC.
As our just spell out why you want change and why you think that will end what you call distraction. Wouldn't it just plunge your party and the country into further chaos as a new leader is sought?
I think the reality is, Glenn, that there are so many achievements of a UK Labour government, so many good things that are happening across our country. But if you ask people, they can't see them and they can't hear them because the leadership in Downing Street has become a huge distraction. And I've had to think about my own priority, and my own priority, my first loyalty, is to Scotland. And Scotland needs to fundamentally take the opportunity for changing in Scotland in 3 months' time.
But who do you want to replace Keir Starmer? And if that is a leadership contest, won't that cause months of chaos?
Let me be really clear. I am not supporting or backing any alternative or any candidate. This is not about MPs versus MSPs. This is about what is right for Scotland. And
what is right for Scotland? That is Anna Sawat, the Scottish Labour leader, calling for Keir Starmer to resign. Make no mistake, that is big. This is a huge development in this never-ending charade in Downing Street. He wouldn't be drawn there just on that last question from one of the journalists as to who should replace him. So it's not my job. Anna Sawat's position on this is that the SNP, is it funny how politics change? The SNP were this toxic breed half an hour ago. Everything that had gone on with Sturgeon and others, it looked as if they were never, ever again going to see the light of day. And now, after what has been happening, perhaps more so in Westminster than in Holyrood, their star is rising again. Anna Sawat's point is, if you want Labour to win in Scotland, then you've got to change the Prime Minister in England, or in Westminster, rather. Ian is down in London. Ian, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
I think it's quite funny listening to that Anna Sawat when he's sort of going on about like the independence again for Scotland. It's like the same in a roundabout way. It's the same thing with Sadiq Khan in London.
Yeah.
I want independence for London.
Yeah.
Right? It's very funny how all these MPs and all these sort of people want to do independence everywhere. But basically, Ian, we've spoken many times over the last couple of weeks. I've got no love at all for Starmer. But I think he's got to stay in there because what's behind him, absolutely, this country will be independent because there won't be anybody want to deal with anything. Hello?
Yeah, no, I'm all ears at this, Elliot. Do you sense then, I mean, if we had someone else there, are you saying that would make Labour and the government even worse than it currently is, or it would improve it to a point that would cause a problem for parties like Reform or the Greens?
I think, quite truthfully, there is nobody there that's any good. You've got Rachel Reeves, who can't sort of do the Treasury. You've got the Foreign Minister, Yvette Cooper, lousy at her job. You've got the Home Secretary, not much better. You've got David Lammy, mastermind, absolutely like off his head. Sorry, that's Miliband. So who are they going to get behind? Who are they going to get behind?
I mean, it can't be some of those people. It can't be Ed Miliband. It can't be a bloke that... I know Corbyn stood twice to become Prime Minister, but he remained the Labour leader, and he was a particular brand of Labour and socialism and the like. So he gave it another go. It didn't work either. But Miliband spectacularly lost. So why would anybody think he was the man to lead the United Kingdom?
I know. This is the whole thing. And really, do they think that Angela Rayner would be so much better? They haven't got a clue. They know they've ruined it, as they say, in 14, 15 months, what the Tories did in 14 years. They know the writing's on the wall. And as it goes with McSweeney, I think, you know, as they all sort of say, it's incredible, his demise, as opposed to somebody like, was it Dominic Cummings? Dominic Cummings went on a round trip up north.
Yeah, but he had bad eyes, Ian, right?
Yeah, he had bad eyes.
Yeah, you've got to get the eyes. There's nowhere else you'd go.
Yeah, does that mean that McSweeney also had bad eyes, that he didn't see what Mandelson was up to?
It's kind of interesting, isn't it, that these characters, the whole point, and I think it was Giles Dillnot or one of the other guests we had on today, Ian, said, look, you know, the McSweeney's talent, if that's it, was that he was meant to be the guy. You know, he comes from a fairly modest background in Cork, in Ireland, came over to the UK as a teenager, became a bricklayer, I think, or worked on building sites. He was meant to be a kind of pulse to the sort of white working classes who felt left behind. He was the guy that was going to relay that vibe and that feel to the Prime Minister. And he'd successfully kind of outmanoeuvred Corbynites and got them to come over to a different way of thinking. He'd done all of that. But Starmer wasn't the bloke to deliver that message, was he? Because he never sounded like any of that. He just didn't have that extra gene, as it were, that you need to become the Prime Minister.
He never had the wow factor. That's where...
Yeah, he's not alone, in fairness, but yes, you're right.
Well, Cummings was very good with Johnson because he had that sort of thing. The other one, which is the one that supports Burnley.
Alistair Campbell.
Yeah, the same thing. He was the sort of one behind the scenes, pulling all the strings and doing all that. Again, because he had Blair that could come across as a smooth salesman.
Yeah.
But Starmer never, ever came across that sort of way.
No, he never did. And every time he kind of tried it, he kept talking about being the son of a toolmaker and I'm a working class boy. You know, he was fair enough. You know, he was working class for about half an hour. And then the old man did rather well. And they grew up in a nice area. And, you know, the working class doesn't really touch. And when you sound like that, you know, and your communication in that, I'm sure in a courtroom, he was probably a demon when it came to standing there with his wig on and doing his prosecuting or his defending, which I think it's the latter. He was probably great, but, he did it for years. But as Prime Minister, just not there. Ian, I'm going to have to move, but great points. And I think Alistair Campbell will be delighted to be mostly known as that one that supports Burnley rather than that one that used to support Tony Blair. On the back of the Anna Sower statement, Downing Street has insisted Keir Starmer will not quit following the Scottish Labour leader's call for him to resign, with a spokesman saying he has a clear 5-year mandate from the British people to deliver change, and that is what he will do. That's usually the press release that means he's going, oddly. David Lammy said, Keir Starmer won a massive mandate 18 months ago for 5 years to deliver on Labour's manifesto that we all stood on. We should let nothing distract us from our mission to change Britain, and we will support the Prime Minister in doing that. That would be fine if you could see you know, when you want to sort of imagine that. When people think of reform, OK, here's the difference. Whether you're a naturalised reform supporter or you hate the life out of them, you can visualise the change that they want to make, that they believe in. You can see what that might look like. Now try and visualise Keir Starmer's change and what that might look like. You can think of some, pretty awkward moments. Think Channel Migrants for details. But broadly, trying to find that. Now, it could well be, which is why that comment that Alistair Campbell made, that we played a little clip of earlier from his podcast, I thought was quite profound. It's the most sensible thing. We used to have Alistair Campbell on the programme. I don't think he'll come on these days. He doesn't like me anymore for some reason. I can't think why. What could I have said about Labour and that administration that he worked with? But what he said on that podcast about the difficulty in governing today, he talked about the United Kingdom being ungovernable, essentially. He really did hit a point. We're dealing with a perfect storm and a heady cocktail of all sorts of tentacles, from public's appetite, a skewed media, social media, which is sort of an out-of-control rage machine, and then conventional media, whether it admits to it or not, slightly plays to the social media group, either from the left perspective or the right perspective. And I think his point, and we'll listen to the clip again later, I think his point is you never get anything done because nobody knows and everyone's afraid of making the big decisions. 0344 499 1000. We're going to be back with more calls from you in just a couple of moments. This is Talk.
There's no way that the Prime Minister should have appointed Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to Washington, given the official briefing that he'd been given. But he went ahead and did it anyway. I don't think we can trust his judgment ever again. And I think the Labour Party is waking up to the fact that it can't trust his judgment ever again.
Is it his judgment or is it Morgan McSweeney's judgment? And should Morgan McSweeney go?
And Morgan McSweeney, who's Peter Mandelson's protégé, very obviously gave the Prime Minister bad advice. But ultimately, responsibility rests with the Prime Minister.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, 10 to 2. So here's what's happened. Anna Sower, who's the Scottish Labour leader, has called for Keir Starmer to resign. And immediately, almost like they had it ready to go, a flurry of senior cabinet ministers have started tweeting. They've been on the Twitter, haven't they, or X. David Lammy, I mentioned his one. Steve Reid, who's the Community and Housing and Local Government Secretary, said, Keir led our party to victory and won a mandate for change. Waiting lists are falling, wages are rising, new rights for renters and leaseholders. We need to stay the course and deliver the change this country voted for. They're all saying something rather similar here. Funny that Rachel Reeves says, for uninitiated, she's the Chancellor. Rebuilding Britain takes time, but thanks to the decisions we've made, NHS waiting lists are falling, inflation is falling, interest rates are falling, the conditions for the economy to grow are there. With Keir as our Prime Minister, we are turning the country around. Nobody believes that. Sometimes in politics there is a rather cruel reality, and that is that perception becomes the reality. I'm pretty sure if you dive deep enough into a Department of Government's books and their to-do list, you might find a tick on one of them. I couldn't name what that might be. But the perception and the broad sense, the public observation of what is happening with our government is that it's miserable, it's failing, and has no discernible direction. And I can't imagine Keir Starmer can ever now change that around. That's the point. Put another leader in there, well, those on the left may be happier, they'll be grinning like the proverbial cats from Cheshire, but will it long term make any big difference? Now let's, as we digest everything that's happened in the last half an hour, continue to take more of your calls as well. Let's look back at this point, the growing calls for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to face criminal probe as it emerges that he passed on confidential reports to Jeffrey Epstein in 2010. Now this, of course, was when Prince Andrew was a UK global trade envoy. This is translated. It's even affected royal walkabouts. Now, the King was out and about this morning, and he was heckled, essentially, quite dramatically, over his disgraced brother earlier today. Have a listen.
Charles, how long have you known about Andrew and Epstein? Have you been protecting Andrew from prosecution?
Well, often the heckler doesn't get heard, but that chap certainly did. Let's speak with Richard Fitzwilliams, royal commentator. Afternoon to you, Richard. I mean, somebody as seasoned as King Charles, he's done royal walkabouts since he was about 7. So he's fully aware that once in a while somebody shouts something out. He was probably prepared that that might happen, at least advised that that could happen. But I mean, there it is. That's where we're at, that we have the king of our country being questioned by the public about his brother's links to a convicted paedophile while his brother was a trade envoy. I mean, this is a mess, isn't it?
I'm afraid it is far from salutary. Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, I have to say it is a very great pity that every one of these hecklers, and there are quite a few now, the actual event, the person, the fact that it exists, gets such a lot of publicity. I mean, the only way of handling it is to be as quiet as possible about it. And quite frankly, if every single heckler gets headlines, then we're going to have more of it. And that is the last thing that we need, because it's not only undignified, but it's thoroughly stupid. And it certainly hasn't been part and parcel of our life for a long time. But I'm afraid the issue with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is certainly not going away. Far from it. As you mentioned, the police are assessing whether or not the criminal behaviour as a special envoy. He was special envoy from 2001 for 10 years and stepped down after it was revealed, well, in fact, it was his links with Epstein that caused the end of that job. Facts are also 2011 was when that photograph was published in the Mail on Sunday, the photograph of him with Virginia Giuffre, which subsequently, according to reports and Ghislaine Maxwell's observations, was indeed genuine, which is what we always thought.
Yeah, indeed. I think most of us already did. And I guess the other issue around this, I mean, what does it mean? You know, much of the Epstein story, whether it's about the royals or whether it's about Downing Street, the problem seems to be who knew what when. So people almost guilty by association. If you knew that Mandelson was connected still to this man, why was he therefore appointed as an ambassador, etc.? And is there a similar issue here for the royal household in that, you know, what did they know at Buckingham Palace when all of this was going on, when he was telling Newsnight in that now notorious and regrettable, I'm sure from his perspective, interview with Emily Maitlis that, nope, I have no more contact with this man, and we know that now to be a lie. If the palace knew more than they let on, is the entire integrity of our royal family in trouble here?
Well, there was the question that's been asked today, should King Charles apologise? I mean, he's the fountain of justice, and if he did any such thing, it would mean essentially that it would be almost impossible, assuming that this arises, which we simply don't know, though another issue is being investigated regarding Epstein possibly trafficking a woman for Andrew at Royal Lodge. It wouldn't be possible to give him a fair trial. I mean, who knew what at the palace? It would be very, very difficult to discover it, but whether or not there's going to be an internal investigation, where exactly this is going to lead. The point is, one of the extraordinary aspects of this, and as you know, it's gone on for years in one sense or another, is that we simply don't know where it's going. We don't know what's going to come out.
Yes.
it's just a phenomenally, it's quite extraordinary, in fact, the behaviour, and this is Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson when he was Special Representative for British Trade. It was perfectly obvious, or has been from the information, not only in Andrew Lowney's book entitled The Rise and Fall of the House of York, but other emails and other information, that they were enriching themselves at the same time.
And Richard, a response, if you would, from a statement that's been released on behalf of William and Kate today. They have talked about their deep concern over what is going on. A spokesman for the couple told journalists this is ahead of them arriving in Riyadh for a 3-day trip to Saudi Arabia, certainly Prince William. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been deeply concerned by the continuing revelations. Their thoughts remain focused on the victims.
I think that is in line with the statement put out by the King and Queen when Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was stripped of his titles, where the emphasis was on the victims. The victims, there's some 1,000 to 1,200, I understand, those who've survived Epstein's abuse. And naturally, they're very angry that the only person put behind bars, at least to my knowledge, is Ghislaine Maxwell for 20 years of child sex trafficking. So this very clearly is where the emphasis needs to be, and I think it's important to put that statement out. Having said that, William, of course, the consummate diplomat, he was in Palestine and the occupied territory, and also in Israel in 2018. He was with Donald Trump at Notre Dame when it reopened last year. He's got a flair for this, and it's a very important visit to Saudi Arabia, of course, with investment and trade, sustainability, and reportedly arms dealing in the forefront. But I fear with not only the vast political upheaval, which, as you know, we're undergoing at the moment, but also with the spotlight on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and to some extent on Sarah Ferguson, the trip, I fear, will be overshadowed. It's what happens in royal life. You prepare, and then, of course, the unexpected happens. We have the world's most high-profile monarchy. When things are going well, it's absolutely wonderful how they get the message across. When they're going badly, and in this case, you don't know what's coming, it's very difficult.
Indeed. On that point, Richard, great to have you on, sir. Thank you for your time, Richard Fitzwilliams, royal commentator on the latest there, the King getting heckled over this. I mean, how did this story of our times end up in this place? When you consider we've got so used to discussing it, sometimes you have to take a step back and go, really? A trade envoy, a senior member of the royal family, a paedophile, lies, obfuscation, all manner of other issues. Then you've got the Mandelson story too. You've got now the Prince and Princess of Wales talking about their deep concern and their focus remaining on the victims. Everybody is forced into this curious place. Senior members of Keir Starmer's team having to resign too in 24 hours. 0344 499 1000. The time now, 3 o'clock.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. Home of Common Sense. As you've been hearing in the last hour, Anas Sarwar, the leader of Scottish Labour, has called for Keir Starmer to resign, stating that while Starmer is a friend, he needs to put Scotland first. This was followed by Downing Street insisting that Keir would not quit, according to his spokesman, who said he's got a clear 5-year mandate from the British public to deliver change, and that is what he will do. And then Cabinet Minister after Cabinet Minister jumping straight to X with their ringing endorsements of their leader. Also this afternoon, Keir's Director of Communications has resigned, of course. I think you would have been more aware of these last two stories than most if you listen to us here on Talk. They are big. Tim Allen has just quit a day after Morgan McSweeney quit, a day after Anas Sarwar called for Keir Starmer to quit. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is big and troubling for Number 10. We'll keep across it. And we'll see what the reports are from the Reform Conference, where they're convening in Birmingham, and what announcements that will entail. We'll cross live to there in just a bit. And also, as we discussed in the last section, it's been found that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor leaked trade envoy reports to Jeffrey Epstein. He passed on an email containing at least 4 assessments in 2010 when he was the UK Global Trade Envoy. That, again, is not just troubling but potentially criminal. Not just Mandelson, who's facing a criminal investigation, potentially the former Prince Andrew. Back to your calls and comments. Tony says, how embarrassing for the Labour Party and two-tier Keir. Shameful. I think he's talking about the Anas Sarwar announcement. It's huge. That is huge. Even if you don't know much about Anas Sarwar, a senior colleague calling for you to go on a national platform like that is massive. Andy in Middlesbrough, maybe Reform's big announcement is that Keir Starmer is defecting. Yes, we did make this point a little earlier. Wouldn't that be hilarious? I don't want Starmer to resign. The people of this country should demand a general election, says Andy. And this is Mary in Hemel Hempstead on what is going on currently, the state of play in this country. Mary, good afternoon to you.
Look, you made a comment about what did the palace know with regards to Andrew before.
Yeah.
Well, what did the media know before Starmer came in power? Because he said very little, Starmer. They never really put out their policies. They just kept saying everything was costed and this, that and the other. But we heard very little. And because, unfortunately, their hatred of what the last Tory government, which I can well understand and go along with, they refused, they didn't reveal to us, for example, all the freebies. It started there. All the freebies that suddenly appeared when they'd been saying, oh, they were not going to do anything like that. I remember Tony Blair coming into power and saying, we are going to be whiter than snow. This was after Major's government.
Yeah.
That anybody who is corrupt or...
will be gone. Well, it took about half an hour, didn't it, before one of their ministers was found on Clapham Common with his trousers down, if you remember. So there was that, there was the Eccleston affair, there was all sorts of things. I mean, it happens to all of them, I guess, in that respect. I think what's happened with Starmer and this stuff with Mandelson and all that entails and all the various characters it entails is bigger than many scandals we've seen for a long time, Mary.
Yeah, oh, well, I quite agree. It's far bigger than the Profumo affair. But the thing is that, as I say, Tony Blair said if anybody committed anything like that was against what the girl was corrupt or whatever sleazy, he wanted their resignation first thing in the morning.
Yeah, indeed. And Starmer, of course, he was talking a lot, wasn't he, about country first, party second. I don't know whether he's putting his country first at the moment, Mary.
And Angela Rayner, didn't she say when Boris was going to be dethroned, she said, we should have a general election, they shouldn't just have it re-elected.
Yeah, they all make that same point, don't they?
Same thing that
No, don't even wish for it, because it won't happen, will it? They will try. I mean, if they get, if one of these characters at some point, the smart money says in the next couple of days, you're going to get one of these people who want the big job start to say, I've got 80 MPs supporting me, I'm going to challenge Keir Starmer, and away we go.
They won't call for a general election, but
no.
do like to know, why did the media not reveal to us all these things they must have known?
Which bits are you talking about? Like you said, you mentioned the freebies. I don't know if the media did know that. I think the media would have been quite happy to report on the fact that Keir Starmer was walking around in about 12 grand's worth of suit, courtesy of Lord Ali.
Oh, well, I think they mustn't. You know, they hold on to information for years, don't they?
So,
really?
yeah, they do sometimes. But I think sometimes, you know, despite how things often look, the answer is quite simple. And certainly the thing about expenses and season tickets and God knows what else, glasses, that was another one. Everyone, I mean, the list went on. Mary, you make a good point. Thank you for that. And certainly, if we had been in possession of information about freebie suits, I think a lot of it happened once he became Prime Minister, didn't it? A lot of the you know, remember when every cabinet minister went to see Taylor Swift 3 times? I mean, it was like, how often can you go and see Taylor Swift? Her set's about 6 hours long. If you can sit through that 3 times, you almost deserve a medal. Laura is in Wiltshire. Laura, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Well, I've been pretty much, I woke up early this morning, been listening to talk all day since 6. I mean, how sad am I? On and off with other things.
No, that's
but,
good.
You know, I think this administration could do well to just tune in, or the comms people could, for a day and see what real people think. And your previous caller, I was just really interested, and it's a small thing, but the suits and the Taylor Swift tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, of interest. But this is so much bigger, and that's the sort of thing that they tried to get Boris's administration on, who I have criticisms of. It was, you know, did you have a drink during lockdown?
Yeah.
That's the equivalent of Taylor Swift tickets. But this is way, way bigger than that.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I'm really interested to see how Jonathan Powell comes out of this.
Yep.
And those Chinese spies who didn't get investigated, and how that ties into all of this.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned Lord Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone remember that he was being sent by the Labour Party on their costs to go and see Assad? What happened with that?
Yeah.
And Lord Ali, very much in communication with Mandelson.
Sorry, Assad. I thought you said Aswad at first,
No,
as in the band.
Aswad, that's the band. Maybe you got tickets for them as well.
That would have been great. They all went to see Taylor Swift. Lord Ali went to see Aswad. I mean, he got the raw end of the deal there. Yeah, don't turn around.
No, but Assad. but this is so much bigger. And I was just been listening to all the Tory grandees today. Nothing to see here.
No.
Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
They can't read the room.
Tittle-tattle.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a marvellous Prime Minister. And all this nonsense. And you think what they took down the previous Tory government on,
Yeah.
it doesn't even begin to compare.
It really doesn't. And I think, yeah, go on.
Sorry, your guy Oscar was saying earlier in the show that, you know, maybe there's a dead cat that he's waiting for, because I don't think this guy's going to go without being really pushed, because he doesn't read the room. He is a hollow man with no ideas, never had any idea except of being in charge, and then they'll go, oh God, what do we do now? But your guy Oscar said, is there a dead cat? And the thing that really worries me, because I'm a royalist, is I think that there's worse to come out. And having listened to the excellent Andrew Lowney a couple of times today, I think there's worse to come out. And I'm worried that he's just waiting for something to come out on this whole linked through thing.
And dead cat the whole thing.
Yeah, dead cat, the whole thing. And that the king is going to have to say, look, the Queen and I, late Queen and I knew, I don't know, something really bad. And I think he is holding on by the skin of his teeth in the hope that something like this will come through. And it's incredibly depressing and so much more serious than what brought down the last government.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Laura, brilliantly observed. Thank you very much for that, and lovely to speak to Laura in Wiltshire, where the support for support for Starmer is all over the place, but of course it comes mostly from his front benchers. These are some of the messages on X. David Lammy says Keir Starmer won a massive mandate 18 months ago for 5 years to deliver on Labour's manifesto that we all stood on. We should let nothing distract us from our mission to change Britain, and we support the Prime Minister in doing that. Well, things change, Mr. Lammy. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, said this. rebuilding Britain takes time, but thanks to the decisions we've made, NHS waiting lists are falling, inflation is falling, interest rates are falling, the conditions to grow the economy are there. With Keir as our Prime Minister, we are turning the country around, she says. In the last few moments, Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, has posted this. Later this week, Keir Starmer will head our delegation to the Munich Security Conference. At this crucial time for the world, we need his leadership, not just at home, but on the global stage. And we need to keep our focus where it matters, on keeping our country safe. It's interesting. Interesting. And I noted as well that something that doesn't really come up, Steve Reed, who's the Housing and Communities Secretary, the local government secretary, who tweeted, I won't even run over it because it's pretty much the same thing. Morgan McSweeney first entered the, if you like, he's an Irish guy from just south of Cork, I think. When he first entered the political world in England, the first person that the first entree into that world was campaigning for Steve Reed for the local borough of Lambeth to be a councillor back in 2006. Just a little factoid there. We are going to be crossing live as well to Birmingham. It's the Reform Conference. What are they likely to be announcing? Well, as soon as it happens, we're over there. You'll miss nothing. We've got our reporter there as well. Let's get more comment from you, Jason in Wiltshire. Jason, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the call this afternoon.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Mr. Older Judith Chalmers. If you ever watched that programme, the is it Slum Landlords and Bad Tenants?
Yeah. I do. Yeah. In fact, what the guy that is on it, Paul Champliner, is a regular with us on the programme.
Yeah, well, the sort of scenario we're going down with old Judith is going to be that he's the living tenant that. He's sat in there, he's got all the perks and everything that he wants. He's going to be kicking and screaming to get him out of Downing Street. He's not going to hand his notice in at all.
Oh, he's going to be the one that stands behind the door just shouting, I'm not letting you in.
But all his perks, he goes off on his little trips all the time. He's never here. Everything else he gets, his champagne socialist lifestyle.
Yeah.
Would you want to give that up if that was you?
Well, that's also it, isn't it? And in addition to that, I think you have to remember that he's only been Prime Minister for 19 months, and there's one record that Prime Ministers don't want, and that's to be one of the shortest serving. And if he went this week, he'd have served, I think I'm right in saying, less time than Rishi Sunak, who did about 2 years. On that point, Jason, thank you very much indeed. I like it. Love that comparison as well. I'm not going anywhere. Sitting on the other side of the big black door at number 10. We're going to pause momentarily, straight back with you. We're live to Birmingham Reform Conference. We are told, I know you never know until you hear it, that there could well be announcements. Maybe there are more people coming over. We've constantly been hearing over the last few weeks that somebody from Labour, maybe a former Labour MP, would be joining Reform. The smart money was on Kate Hoey, which I referenced earlier to Sarah Pochin when we spoke to her. But it's often been said, no, we're not talking about Kate Hoey. Or are they? Find out more in a few moments' time, right here on Talk.
There's no way that the Prime Minister should have appointed Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to Washington, given the official briefing that he'd been given. But he went ahead and did it anyway. I don't think we can trust his judgment ever again. And I think the Labour Party is waking up to the fact that it can't trust his judgment ever again.
Is it his judgment or is it Morgan McSweeney's judgment? And should Morgan McSweeney go?
And Morgan McSweeney, who's Peter Mandelson's protégé, very obviously gave the Prime Minister bad advice. But ultimately, responsibility rests with the Prime Minister.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 3:15. Let's head over then to Birmingham. The Reform Conference is about to kick off fully. Our own Jeremy Kyle is hosting over there, so let's dip in and hear what Jezza and others are saying.
Much is on the line, I think, and I think Nigel and the team will tell you today that general election can actually feel closer than it has ever felt before. And that, yeah. Some parts of the media will tell you this is media noise. I think it's real momentum, and I think the 2,500 people here today will tell you that there is a vibe in this country that is getting stronger and stronger by the day. We thought we'd come to Birmingham, a city at the heart, Britain's second city at the heart of the United Kingdom, and to be fair, a place that's experienced many problems and a place where real change needs to happen. And Reform tell you that change starts right now, ladies and gentlemen. So you'll know that the Magnificent Seven have become the Eight. I was trying to work out what I could call them, the After Eights, maybe. All seven over there on that little stage. If you shine a light on Richard Tice, he's already sat there waiting to be interviewed. Give Richard Tice a round of applause. So 8 members of Parliament, including Nigel, of course, 3 new members, 900 councillors, and of course it all aims towards May the 7th, those elections in England, Scotland and Wales. Those are the ones that the Labour Party haven't cancelled because they're bothered about the results, I suspect. But are those boos, ladies and gentlemen? It's quite weird having people behind you. I feel like Keir Starmer. I should be looking over my shoulder. If somebody stabs me in the shoulder blades. Listen, we're going to go over there, we're going to interview all 7 members of Parliament, and then the big moment later on, the man that many people believe will be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Nigel Farage, will be on this stage later, ladies and gentlemen. So, pick up microphone and walk. Just make some noise. I'm going to try and not fall over. If I don't fall over, that'd be good. Now, as I walk along here, I have to walk past the press. Watch this. Where are they? Where are the press? Wave if you're in the press. Oh, they're nowhere to be seen. Where are the press? Oh, all right, press. How are you? Do one. I'm joking. So listen, let's make our way. This is stage B, apparently. There's a lovely man with a camera. Ah, there's the press. There they are. Look at that. Don't fall up the stairs, idiot. That would be really... Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform. How are you?
How are we? All right?
Yeah, not bad. Give Richard a round of applause.
Wow. This is very cosy, isn't it?
Where should we start?
Wow, good question. Actually, I've got a bone to pick with you.
You've got a bone to pick with me?
Yes, I have.
Why?
Yes. Well, you see, there you were, interviewing my beloved, live on talkTV just the other day.
Could I just say up 39% and the radio station?
Yeah.
More people listen to...
Forget all that. It's when you said that she should dump me that we became ex-friends.
That is Richard Tice speaking with our own Jeremy Kyle. We, of course, will dip back into what is happening there in Birmingham. Jezza there is going to be interviewing the 7 Reform MPs. And then, of course, the big speech from Nigel Farage. What does that entail? Does it mean there's going to be more defectors to Reform UK? Is there any truth to those ongoing rumours that it's going to be somebody from the left, a former Labour MP? Constantly hearing that. Maybe we'll get some clarity a little later on, but we will cross live when Nigel Farage speaks at that conference, Reform UK conference in Birmingham today. Back to your calls. Charlie in East Sussex. How are you doing, Charlie?
Hello, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Fire away. What have you got for us?
Well, I know everybody's saying, oh, he's going to resign. Bing Starmer, this is. Resign. But no, I don't think he'll do this. I think this is how it will play out, is that we'll go through the May elections. He'll limp on until then.
Yep.
And then after the elections, it'll be so bad, so catastrophic for Labour that the whole of the backbenchers and probably all of the front benches as well will be calling for his resignation then. And I think he'll then go to the public, the plebs, rather than his own comrades kick him out. I think he's got such an ego.
Do you think so? That he'll mess it up for every... If he's lost his job, so can half of this lot.
Yeah. He's that robotic and that egotistical that I just don't think he can stand that his comrades will boot him out. I think that would be a fate worse than death for him. Part of the Fabians, of course. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, if somebody took over Labour, took over Keir Starmer's job in the next couple of weeks, would that change their fortunes, Charlie, at the May elections?
No, because I think they're a party that's going to be limping on. I mean, you look what happened to the Tories when they finally booted Boris out for a lot less, than what this lot have done. And then we had two other incumbent PMs with no mandate. One of them, they wanted to get rid of, which was Liz Truss, because he was going to expose people.
Yep.
And then, of course, Rishi Sunak didn't have a mandate at all. So therefore, he was just limping along. And I think this is what will happen to Labour. And I think that Reform definitely, are sort of warming up everything. Yeah. And I do believe we will see a general election autumn going into the winter of this year.
Wow.
I really do.
Wow. On that point, Charlie, great analysis and really interesting theory. Charlie thinks it will be this year we have a general election. Starmer won't think of country first, party second. He'll think of his own career first. And if any of those characters on the back benches are going to muck it up for him, well, he'll muck it up for them. Go to the country. May, if you had a different Labour, would that make a difference to their fortunes at the May local elections? I mean, if it was a different person, we will never know, of course, will we? We will never know whether or not the Starmer would have done worse or better. Mary is in Cyprus. Mary, hi.
Oh.
Hello, Mary.
How are you?
I'm good as gold. What are you thinking, Mary?
What I'm thinking is I don't think Ian Starmer will resign because I don't think it's in him. I don't think he could stand anybody else in the Labour Party taking over the premiership. That is my opinion. But I think that when the elections happen, he might then call for a general election so that, he won't be Prime Minister anymore, but he knows that the Labour Party won't get in. So he won't lose its faith as he would.
Well, yeah, I mean, he can keep on going, can't he? I mean, and unless, of course, there is such momentum to have him replaced. But now we've had this announcement from Anas Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, and then with these local elections coming up in just 12 weeks' time, very close, he must know he can't hang on.
Well, you see, I don't think he's got that sort of characteristic because I don't think he cares about the country. I think he cares more about himself and the position he's in. And, of course, you've got to think how many global visits has he got planned so he can go off again and not worry about his own country.
Yeah. We are in such a curious time, aren't we? I love this. Mary, thank you very much indeed. Say hello to Cyprus. That's Mary calling us from there. What is great about living in a democracy and working for the greatest talk station anywhere is the amount of views we get in. Not every view will turn out to be correct, but the point is this. When we live in a world where we're constantly told people don't pay attention to current affairs, people don't pay attention to what's going on, and worse, people don't care what is going on, that is tosh. And our audience, our growing audience, as you will have heard from the previous listening figures, are testament to that clearly being balderdash. There is a lot of very strong feeling, people who care for our country, people who care about its direction, people who care for common sense, people who care for the future of their children and their grandchildren. That's what we're all about. It's just a basic common sense approach. It's people nattering, me, you, people messaging in, you name it. So there is the encouraging factor on all of this. Whether people or any of us turn out to be correct on our analysis of what might happen going forward. Keir Starmer, Labour, who's likely, will the Tories come back, Reform UK, etc., is not the point here. The fact is we are the home of where, not just the home of common sense, but the home where people do care about their country and its future. Joan in Sunderland. Joan, good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Hello.
So Starmer has a mandate for 5 years to bring about change for this country. He certainly has brought change for the country, but of the wrong kind. Everything in his manifesto was lies. He was going to clean up politics, lies. Everything is sleaze. He's trying to cancel our democratic rights, free speech, jury trials, and even elections for the second year in a row. He's brought about that ridiculous deal for the Chagos Islands. Somebody must have came in one day and said, oh, we'll give some property away. And it's that. The ridiculous situation with the Chinese embassy that has put our financial services in London in serious danger, and given the Chinese a large listening post outside of China.
Indeed, right up and close and personal to the city.
We've got all this thing with Mandelson and what have you. And honestly, to listen to this lot coming out and supporting this man is an absolute disgrace. They're a treacherous government, the lot of them. There's just unrivaled immigration. He's certainly changing the country. I'm nearly 86. And believe me, I can't understand. I'm shocked by the amount of change that I'm seeing in this country.
Yeah. And I mean, what you've said there it is, encapsulated brilliantly. And that is the shock value that I think even us cynics are experiencing. Nobody thought it would be this bad this quickly. You might think over, 5 years, then things look a bit tired. We're 19 months in, but the rot set in. It was winter fuel allowance, really. That was the point when you thought, these people aren't in touch with anyone. Joan, I've got to move for no other reason than time. Great call. Thank you very much indeed. We are going to be crossing, of course, back to Birmingham for what is happening there at the Reform UK. It's like a mini conference. Having said that, there's a good few thousand people in the audience there. Our own Jeremy Kyle hosting up and chatting to many of the Reform MPs, and of course a bigger speech coming from Nigel Farage. We'll cross and get that view shortly as well. 0344 499 1000. It's 3:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. We have about so much going on this afternoon. This is going to carry on for a long, long time, of course. We wait to see what Nigel Farage says at his conference. Anna Sawar speaking for Scottish Labour, saying Mr Starmer must resign. A lot of support, though, as you would imagine, because they always do this. They're all taking, what's the phrase? They took to Twitter. X, actually. David Lammy, Yvette Cooper, they've all made their points known that Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, is the man to carry on doing the job, and they support everything that he does. That's how it's looking so far. Dave in Bristol says, let's be honest, nothing has happened in Number 10 to address the huge, very damaging problems that face this country for the last 19 months, which has been filled with nothing but promises, lies and smoke and mirrors, says Dave. It is quite hard to find and genuinely, I say this objectively, to be able to point to a policy or something, if you were a Labour voter and supporter, to go, well, they've done this, they've done this. I don't know what you'd point to. And I think it has been a heady catalogue of ineptitude. But if you were a voter of Keir Starmer and supporter of Keir Starmer and a voter for Labour, I can only imagine that you would be quite disappointed. Let's get a word with James Mathewson, former Labour spokesman. James, always good to get your view on these things. Look, let's just put this on the table to start with. I know you're not a big fan of Keir Starmer, but you are a fan of popcorn, and we've all needed plenty of that in the last couple of hours. Goodness me.
Absolutely, Ian. Look, I got to say, on a human level, who would want to be Keir Starmer right now? It's a very difficult time, right? And we build relationships with people we work with. That's the way the world works. For him to be sat in Downing Street with his team, watching the TV on the wall, as Anna Sawar, who was a personal friend of his outside of politics, is saying that he needs to go and that he's damaging Labour's chances of even being able to hold on to the seats they've already got in Holyrood, let alone win more. That's got to be a tough watch. It's got to be a hard time.
That's got to be it, no matter who you are. And of course, this isn't happening. No, this isn't any longer some, I mean, even with that, when Angela Rayner left and she's sort of a bit of mood music around her at the moment, Starmer could watch that and go, well, this is the woman I fired, so she would say that, wouldn't she? But Anna Sawar is not somebody who fired. He's an equal in many respects, and he's a man who he thought was a mate.
He's a person with his own mandate, from Scottish Labour. And the thing is, Sawar has been trying to distance himself kind of delicately over the past few months. He rebranded from Scottish Labour to Sawar for Scotland, right? Which was like, try and distance himself from that toxic brand. But right now, it's impossible. And I think the reason he's been the first to go and make the first shot is because he has the ability to hide behind Scottish patriotism. Right? What he was saying was, I have to do this in the national interest of Scotland. I'm here in Edinburgh, and that's the mood, right? It's like, why should Scotland have to contend with the issues of the UK? There's a current that runs underneath Scottish politics that allows him to do that and to say, I'm doing this in the interest of Scotland. But ultimately, it's in the interest of himself as well, because he wants to be First Minister. This is his final chance to be First Minister, really. If he doesn't get it at this election, he probably won't stand again. And if Labour keep going the way they're going, as I've spoken to a Scottish Labour senior source in the past half an hour who told me, we cannot win a single seat more than we have now with Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. So it's
and isn't it, not only do you do what you do, James, and I do what I do, but I think I can safely say we're both sort of political anoraks as well. And I found it fascinating. The SNP were about to fall into a kind of a canyon, a nothingness void. The Sturgeon stuff was going on. It seems like half an hour ago this was all happening. Nowhere to be seen. SNP will never, ever be back on the scene, not for generations. And then suddenly starts to turn around rather quickly. The SNP are looking as if they might do rather well on May the 7th, and Labour are looking as if they are going to fall into the aforementioned canyon.
Exactly. I mean, fascinating how quickly that turned around. The SNP were done. They'd been in government for so long, kind of like the Tories were in the UK government, right? They'd been in for so long. Everyone was unhappy with them. Everyone still is, really. But they have managed to very expertly just hold the line, not do anything too controversial, just keep on the straight and narrow, and Labour have imploded, all because of UK Labour and Keir Starmer. Anna Sarwar, right? A pretty charismatic guy. He's a former NHS dentist. He's got great credibility here in Glasgow. He's got great credibility in Edinburgh and a lot of the areas they need to hold. He has just been tarnished, and it must have been so frustrating for him to just have to sit and keep his mouth closed. Now the opportunity's come. He's seen McSweeney go. He's seen the Mandelson stuff's got legs. It's not going to stop running. And he's thought, I'm going to have to do something. It's now or never.
Yeah. What about the wider issue, though, James? Because I keep, and I'm sure they will be sitting there kind of Dad's Army style in Downing Street at the moment, moving the pieces on the political map to say, well, if we do this, that happens. If we don't do this, this happens. Are they thinking of Keir Starmer and the party, or are they thinking of somebody who can be more successful than Keir Starmer? Because you can look at the various characters and see, from a Labour perspective, see the pluses, but you can also see some crunching problems along the way. What happens next?
So two things are happening right now. Amy Richards, who's kind of in Starmer's orbit and is kind of running the show at the moment in Downing Street, is doing a phenomenal job. I mean, I can't imagine. She's not going to get home tonight in time for dinner, put it that way. There'll be some pizzas ordered, I think, from the local takeaway, and they'll be there through the night. But she is kind of weathering the storm. She's the one who will be undoubtedly responsible for the fact that David Lammy's come out. Probably not the best person that you want to be backing you, to be honest, but David Lammy's come out, and then, Rachel Reeves has come out, and slowly but surely, like pulling teeth, they've managed to get cabinet members to actually support Keir Starmer, right, which is phenomenal. They should be doing that anyway. But they've managed to get that. That'll be Amy Richards' doing. But then on top of that, I am hearing, and I've heard this from 3 different, fairly credible sources. I say fairly, as credible as anyone in Westminster ever is. And they're telling me that Angela Rayner and Wes Streeting both have 80 names in their hand who would back them to be leaders. That 80 names they can rely on, and they're the 80 nominations that they would need to stand to be leader. But they won't want to do it as a contest. They won't want to challenge Starmer because it looks bad, right? They'll want to wait and see if he goes of his own volition, which could either happen before 6 p.m. tonight if he doesn't want to face the PLP, or more likely, I think he will go to the PLP tonight, the Parliamentary Labour Party. He'll face all of them MPs and he'll say, this is the way I want to move forward. What do you think? And we'll see what they say.
Yeah. We understand, though, there's some issues there, though. Angela Rayner's still got the HMRC investigation. We're told that could stand in the way. Wes Streeting has a problem. He's 12 years old. That could stand in the way. So you've then got... Sorry, it's the only gag I can say about Wes, really. You've got Ed Miliband, of course, who was once leader and didn't win an election. That could stand in the way. But then, of course, there's others that are not getting mentioned that could come forward.
Yeah, Yvette Coupel definitely want to have another run.
I think so.
As she always does.
Yep.
Shabana Mahmood, who thinks she's ingratiated herself with the right of British politics when they're just laughing at her. And I don't, at the end of the day, I don't see any other talent in the Labour Party that could reckon with the populist tides that we're seeing, that could communicate with the country in a cohesive way, other than Angela Rayner. I do think Angie would be the best bet.
I was going to ask you who you thought that might be.
Yeah,
because,
for me, it's Angela. It's not Wes. I mean, it's never been Wes for me, to be honest. But at the same time, still, he is a continuation of the same kind of Starmer, very polished, very presentable, all of that nonsense, right? It's got to go out the window. You're going to lose. We're going to have our Trump moment here with Farage in the UK if the Labour Party don't get their stuff together. Because the likes of Polanski and the Greens, great, look, I like what he says. I just don't believe that they can win in the areas where Labour can. So right now it's all up for grabs. But listen, the egos come before everything else. So everybody will be thinking, could it be me? You'll have junior Labour MPs who've been in like a year going, ringing their wife and saying, oh, it could be me. I think I could go for it. Like this always happens. But,
imagine our life would change. It would be
exactly.
But I kind of, if I was advising the left right now, and I imagine you might even agree with this, James, I would be, I'd have my eye on those kind of floating voters who were flirting with the Green Party, even the odd Lib Dem. They are apparently still going, so I'd be looking for some of them. And certainly the Corbyn contingent and others. I would take Labour to the left. I would promise either overtly or tacitly to rejoin the European Union. I would go in all of those directions and be, you know, there's no point in chasing Nigel Farage and reform. That was always a silly thing for Mr. Starmer to try and do. I'd say, no, we're a left-wing party, which is why I love Jeremy Corbyn so much, because he was an unapologetic left-winger. He never changed it since I was a kid watching that guy in Parliament. He said the same things then as he says now. So if you're a left-wing party, be a proud left-wing party.
100%, Ian. Like, plurality is the basis of our democracy, right? Us having different opinions, you having someone to vote for who represents you, and me having someone to vote for who represents me, whether we disagree with each other or not. That's the importance. And Labour getting away from what it's meant to be. Same with the Democrats in the US. The Democrats trying to be something they're not. All of these things, blurred lines, made everyone lose faith in all of the politicians, and then all you end up with is that fringe groups gain traction and get support, but we feel like we're losing kind of control of everything. So I think Labour need to, you know, of course I would say that shift to the left, but even just hear them stand on their values and say, rather than parroting Nigel Farage, he's got that locked down. If you want to take the messages of Nigel Farage, he has that locked down, right? You would vote for him. You're not going to vote for the ones pretending to be him.
Yeah, spot on. James, great to have you on. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day. I know you're busy on the media circuit, as it were. James Mathewson, former Labour spokesman. That's what you do, isn't it? You go left if you were them. That's exactly what you do. One of the greatest moments for democracy in this country was when Jeremy Corbyn was running against, firstly, Theresa May and then Boris Johnson. Because it felt like, right, there is a choice there between I mean, we look back at it and we think, well, you know, was it the best Conservative Party under either of those leaders? Some would say yes, others would argue. But it was, without doubt, an obvious and overt show of our political democracy, that there is a left-wing party and there is a centre-right party. I love that. I thought it's great. I thought this Corbyn guy is a nutter. It's an absolute nut job. But he's a left-winger and they are the Labour Party. He's standing for the values he believes are correct. That's great. Theresa May was standing for the values she believed were correct. Here's a bit of breaking news. This is quite funny, all connected to this. Former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner has given Sir Keir Starmer her full support in remaining PM, urging MPs to come together as a team. Do you want me to read that again? I think I should. Angela Rayner, who we are told, and this could just be rumour, as our last guest said, already has the support of at least 80 MPs to challenge Keir Starmer. She has given a statement saying Keir Starmer has her full support, literally, I'm directly quoting there, full support in remaining Prime Minister, urging MPs to come together as a team. Now, one of two things are going on there. She's either A, lying her socks off, or B, hoping that if Starmer does survive this, she'll have another senior job in the cabinet. My smart money, I think, is on A. She has recently tweeted this. The recent scandal around Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein was shocking and demands that both government and our party learn the lessons and act on them. She said, but the worst possible response will be to play party politics or factional games. Labour is only getting started on changing things for the better. Our Employment Rights Act, renters' rights, leasehold reform, free school meals and lifting kids out of poverty. They can't stop saying that. I urge all my colleagues, she says, to come together, remember our values and put them into practice as a team. The Prime Minister has my full support in leading us to that end. And that's what she's tweeted in the last hour or so. So that's where we're at. Rayner says she's on side with Starmer. That should be the moment when Keir Starmer thinks, I'm absolutely banjaxed. I'm absolutely knackered here. Chris is in Bournemouth. Chris, what are you making of this? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi, yep.
The way I'm seeing it at the moment, Ian, the longer he hangs on, the more he looks like a powerless dictator.
Yep.
I now not want him to resign. I want him to call a general election, because there is nobody in that Labour Party I would put the trust of this country in.
There's no one there that you'd, even if it's somebody you disagreed with, there's nobody you'd actually trust.
Not in the Labour Party, no.
Okay.
I mean, Angela Rayner, my goodness, after that that tweet that's just come out that you just read out, my God, she's looking for the leadership.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about that is that our last guest said that those that are apparently going to challenge Starmer would rather not have to challenge him. They'd rather he resigned, and then they can go forward, and they weren't seen to put the boot in. So May the 7th, which of course is the local elections, that's in 12 weeks and 3 days' time. If Starmer gets annihilated, which he surely will, and then resigns, that's when the likes of Angela Rayner can come forward and go, yep, I didn't stab him in the back. In fact, I gave him my full support.
But I think, to be quite honest with you, in the way Starmer operates, if he goes, he's going to take the whole of the Labour Party with him. Because he's going to turn around and say, well, if I can't have it, none of you are having it.
Yeah, it's interesting that perception keeps coming through, that he would, in this business of country first and party second. No, he's Starmer first, party second, country third.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well,
He's a very selfish man.
Yeah, it's not. It's fascinating how the perception of Keir Starmer from this, human rights, I'm one of the nice guys type thing, because all those human rights guys genuinely believe they are the nice guys. It's interesting how it's gone from that to perceptions like that. Chris, thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
There's no way that the Prime Minister should have appointed Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to Washington, given the official briefing that he'd been given. But he went ahead and did it anyway. I don't think we can trust his judgment ever again. And I think the Labour Party is waking up to the fact that it can't trust his judgment ever again.
Is it his judgment, or is it Morgan McSweeney's judgment? And should Morgan McSweeney go?
And Morgan McSweeney, who's Peter Mandelson's protege, very obviously gave the Prime Minister bad advice. But ultimately, responsibility rests with the Prime Minister.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Simon says Yvette Cooper is no more competent than a wet paper bag that had a storm rip through it. Glowing endorsement for Cooper from Simon. Gary in Hartlepool, all the cabinet coming out backing Starmer is like lemmings praising the cliff. Nice analogy. John in Devon, sounds like Starmer has given himself his full support. Good, that means curtains when he gives it to others. Great show, says John. Love that. And S, who are these people that think Labour are doing a good job? They're off their trolleys. Many more aspects of this story to come. Kevin O'Sullivan's here on Drive in around about 6 or 7 minutes' time. We'll talk to Kev in a moment. First, Georgina down in London. Georgina, what is going on? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, my darling. Well, I think that Keir Starmer's dug into number 10 as deeply as an Alabama tick. And I think you're going to need a crowbar to get him out. But I do think it's going to be his own people that get rid of him. I mean, Anna Sawar is correct when he says that Keir Starmer needs to resign. Yeah. As this scandal is tainting the whole of the Labour Party in, and they cannot chance the serious political indiscretions when they have elections coming up in May. Considering Starmer said he was the boss of 8,000 people for 5 years when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, he seems to have rather dropped the ball when looking out for his own cabinet, losing now, Morgan McSweeney, Tim Allen, and now the vote of no confidence from Anna Sawar. We have 2 resignations, and I say that word resignations very lightly. I think they've been asked to resign, and I can guarantee that there'll be more resignations before the dinghy sinks completely for Labour, as now I think people will want to distance themselves from Starmer completely before this government crumbles completely. Starmer's resignation would be a blessing in one respect, but we have to consider the ramifications of who would be appointed to take his place. Angela Rayner as our Prime Ministerial Global Representative is a sobering thought at best, Ian, but seeing as she was accused of breaking the governmental code of conduct and has an ongoing investigation into taxes, I doubt she would be seriously considered for a Prime Ministerial position. Ed Miliband, now he's an a real clear and present danger to our country's economic
success?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if he got into power, I think bankruptcy would surely follow if, God forbid, he was made PM. Wes Streeting, well, he was purported to have said that Mandelson was a legend and has been busily deleting photographs of both he and Mandelson since this sordid story broke out, as well as being Mandelson's protege. Plus, I think he is a little too right-wing leaning to be considered a candidate for PM. And God forbid that the brain of Britain, David Lammy, ever gets considered. So it looks as though we need to buckle up, as this looks to be a political scandal rollercoaster of monumental proportions, and we still have to see what happens in the coming days. But it is a foregone conclusion that Starmer will most definitely stand down, and my cat has brought a mouse into the house. Oh, my God. Ian.
Live on air, a mouse has arrived.
That's why I stopped them. There's a mouse. Oh, my God, there's a mouse in the house. Right, Ian, I've got to get off. Bye.
Go, get the mouse. Get the mouse. There's a mouse in the house down at Georgina's way. I don't think that's ever happened on air. We had a proper Tom and Jerry moment there, where Georgina's cat caught a mouse and brought it into the house, Kev. I mean, what's going on here? It's a national scandal. Is that, I mean, do Ofcom get involved with that? I don't know.
So, hang on, so there was an actual live mouse in Georgina's house?
As Georgina was speaking, her cat came in with a mouse.
Oh, right. So
we don't know the state of the mouse. We've got at the moment, we don't know whether the mouse is going to resign or stay where it is, whether it'll be challenged by the cat. We've got no idea.
Well, no doubt the cat is sending out tweets to support the mouse.
I think so.
Say that the mouse doesn't have to resign.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Which is apparently there's a dog just down the road who's come out and said the mouse has my full support.
Is that
so?
But apparently, what's funny about all these cabinet ministers?
It's an unfortunate analogy. I wasn't meant to make them.
It wasn't very good. It wasn't very very good, Ian. But what's interesting about all these ministers, these cabinet secretaries suddenly coming out to... It started at 2:30 and they've been doing it every 2 minutes. One by one by one. No suspicion that they've been ordered to do that.
And that they all look slightly the same.
Yeah, and nothing suspicious about the fact until 2:30 they've been quiet as a church mouse, if I can put it that way. Haven't said a damn word. Tumbleweed rolling. Suddenly, they cannot get enough of Keir Starmer.
But what do you make of Rayner coming out saying he has my full support? Now that phrase is usually the kiss of death.
I'll tell you, because she needs to sort her stamp duty problems out, and they're not finished yet. And when until she does, she can't go against Starmer.
And of course,
she wants to buy some time.
Indeed, and of course, it would suit any of those that want to take over from him. It would suit them better if he resigned rather than they challenged him.
But you know, Rayner is the main challenger, and you can forget about West Streeting. He's too much of a mate of Mandelson. He's over. He's finished. It will be Rayner. The problem with Rayner is she can't do it right now. She's in a sort of Andy Burnham situation.
Well, she's also not very good.
She technically can't. Well, hey, come on.
So there's that.
Look, none of them are any good. That isn't the point. Of course, they're no good, all of them. But she will be the Red Queen who inherits the earth. But she's not ready yet.